Repetition makes lies seem true. The human brain is not designed to seek truth. It is designed to seek familiarity. When we hear something over and over again, regardless of whether it is fact or fiction, our subconscious begins to accept it as reality. This phenomenon is called the illusory truth effect, and it is one of the most dangerous psychological hacks in existence. Imagine hearing a rumor once. You might doubt it, but when you hear it again from another source, and again in passing conversation, your mind begins to lower its guard. The mere repetition creates the illusion of truth, planting a seed that grows quietly inside your subconscious. Politicians, advertisers, and manipulators know this secret well. They don't need evidence. They only need a message repeated until it feels undeniable. The brain shortcuts effort by equating familiarity with accuracy. A slogan repeated endlessly becomes common sense. A half-truth told enough times begins to feel like a shared reality. Even lies, when spoken consistently, carry the same weight as facts. What makes this hack so sinister is that your brain fights against it with little defense. Every time the phrase resurfaces, it triggers recognition, and recognition feels safe. Safe feels true. The emotional response overrides rational thinking. This is why propaganda works, why fake news spreads, why rumors destroy reputations. Once the cycle of repetition begins, it burrows deep into memory and reshapes perception. Even when you know something is false, the echo lingers. The brain cannot fully untangle repetition from reality. It is not truth that persuades. It is the steady drumbeat of words repeated until belief becomes unavoidable. Nod while speaking for agreement. The subtle motion of a nod may seem insignificant, but it has the power to shape minds and bend conversations in your favor. When you nod while speaking, you are not just signaling agreement. You are planting the suggestion of agreement inside the other person's subconscious. The human brain is wired for mimicry. When we see a gesture, especially one tied to affirmation, we instinctively feel the pull to mirror it. A nod is more than a movement. It is a psychological anchor. Imagine yourself in conversation, presenting an idea that could be accepted or rejected. As you speak, you nod gently, rhythmically, as if punctuating your words with certainty. Without realizing it, the other person begins to nod back, their body aligning with yours, their mind following the silent cue. What began as a physical gesture quickly becomes an emotional agreement. Their subconscious whispers, "Yes, this feels right." Politicians wield this trick on stage, nodding as they speak promises, making the audience feel as though they already agree. Salespeople nod while describing features, coaxing the buyer's head to mirror their own, priming the yes before the deal is even closed. Even in everyday life, this hack can turn hesitant friends into willing allies, unsure strangers into trusting companions. The danger lies in how effortlessly it bypasses rational thought. A nod slides beneath logic, speaking directly to the primitive parts of the brain where safety, trust, and belonging reside. It is not persuasion through argument, but persuasion through rhythm, through body, through the ancient language of motion. When done with subtlety, the nod transforms your words into truths and your requests into inevitabilities. Light touch boosts compliance. A single fleeting touch has the power to shift decisions, soften resistance, and open doors that words alone could never unlock. Human beings are wired to respond to physical contact. Our skin is our largest organ, packed with receptors that send emotional signals straight to the brain. A gentle brush on the arm, a hand on the shoulder, or the briefest contact on the back carries a message deeper than language. You are safe, you are seen, you are connected. When someone feels that subtle connection, their defenses lower. Compliance becomes easier, not because of logic or persuasion, but because touch awakens an ancient bond of trust. Studies in psychology reveal that waiters who lightly touch a customer's hand receive larger tips. Strangers ask for favors after a gentle arm touch are more likely to agree. Even in negotiations, a strategic touch can disarm tension and steer outcomes in your favor. The effect is so profound because touch bypasses conscious reasoning. It ignites the nervous system, flooding the body with warmth, familiarity, and belonging. For a moment, walls come down, and the person touched feels aligned with the one doing the touching. It whispers to the subconscious, "We are together in this." Yet, the real danger lies in how invisible it feels. The touched person often cannot recall the moment later, but the influence remains, shaping their decision in silence. Manipulators exploit this, using a fleeting touch to make others agree, buy, or comply without realizing why. It is one of the most understated yet powerful levers of control, a reminder that influence does not always scream. It can be as quiet as the brush of a hand. Silence forces oversharing. Few things are more uncomfortable to the human mind than silence. When words vanish and a heavy pause fills the air, the brain scrambles to close the gap. Silence feels unnatural, threatening even, and in that tension, people spill secrets they never intended to share. It is a psychological pressure cooker. The longer the pause, the louder the discomfort grows inside the mind, until relief comes only through talking. Interrogators, therapists, and negotiators know this trick well. They ask a question and then say nothing. The pause stretches, the weight builds, and suddenly the subject begins to fill the void, often revealing more than was ever asked. In everyday life, it works the same. When you remain silent after someone's answer, they instinctively dig deeper, offering justifications, emotions, and hidden truths, desperate to break the stillness. Silence wields its power because humans are social creatures trained to maintain flow. A gap in conversation feels like rejection, a threat to belonging, a rupture in connection. To fix it, we overshare. And the beauty, or the danger, of this hack is that you don't have to do anything at all. The silence does the work for you. This makes silence one of the most manipulative tools in existence. In business, it forces concessions. In arguments, it draws confessions. In relationships, it exposes vulnerabilities. The person who controls silence controls the battlefield of words. It is a weapon of influence not through speech, but through restraint, using discomfort itself as leverage until the other person hands you the truth just to make the tension stop. First, last, remembered best. The mind is not a perfect recorder. It is a biased storyteller, and nothing proves this more than the primacy and recency effect. People do not remember everything equally. They remember what comes first and what comes last, leaving the middle to fade into obscurity. The first impression stamps itself into memory with a force that shapes every judgment that follows, while the last impression lingers, echoing long after the moment has passed. Think about a speech, a sales pitch, or even a casual introduction. The opening words set the frame, confidence, warmth, or hesitation, and that frame colors everything that follows. Then comes the end, the closing note that burns itself into memory, the moment people carry with them when the conversation is over. A powerful beginning hooks attention, but a powerful ending seals the story. This is why performers save their strongest act for the finale, why trial lawyers craft unforgettable closing statements, and why great leaders deliver the most impactful lines at the start and the finish. The middle, the hours of detail, the careful reasoning often dissolves, leaving only the bookends standing tall in the mind. The reason is survival. Early information once helped our ancestors judge danger or safety instantly. Final information guided immediate action, fight, flee, or follow. The middle, it was noise. Even today, the brain clings to that same wiring. First and last moments carve themselves deep, while the rest slips away. To influence someone's memory of you, you don't need to dominate the entire interaction. You only need to master the entry and the exit. What begins strong and ends stronger will be remembered as truth. Mirror body language for rapport. There is a hidden code running beneath every human interaction, a language spoken not with words, but with posture, gestures, and subtle movements. When you mirror someone's body language, you tap into that unspoken current, sending a silent message that says, I am like you, I understand you, I belong with you. It is one of the most powerful rapport-building tools because it bypasses logic and speaks directly to the subconscious. Think about the moments when you've noticed two close friends or lovers. They lean the same way, gesture with the same rhythm, even cross their arms in sync. This is not a coincidence. It is human nature. Our brains are wired with mirror neurons, designed to reflect the actions of others so we can connect, empathize, and survive together. When you deliberately mirror someone, leaning forward as they do, folding your arms a beat after, echoing their smile, you slip into that invisible rhythm of familiarity, and familiarity breeds trust. This hack is used everywhere by those who understand its force. Salespeople subtly mirror a client's movements, dissolving resistance. Therapists mirror body language to create safety, making patients open their deepest wounds. Leaders use it to gain loyalty, daters to spark attraction, negotiators to lower defenses. The target rarely notices, but they feel it, an uncanny sense of connection, of comfort, of being understood. The danger lies in how easily it can be abused. Con artists and manipulators mirror their victims to fabricate intimacy, to make them believe they've found a kindred spirit. The victim never suspects that the bond they feel is manufactured, an illusion born of reflection. Done subtly, mirroring becomes invisible influence, weaving trust without a single word. Start small, then go bigger. The human mind hates inconsistency. Once we take a step in a direction, no matter how small, we feel compelled to keep moving forward to stay aligned with our self-image. This is the dark magic behind the foot in the door technique. Start with a tiny, almost trivial request, and once the other person agrees, the path to larger compliance opens wide. Imagine someone asking you to sign a harmless petition. You agree because it costs you nothing. Days later, they return with a bigger request, donating money, volunteering time, or making a commitment. Strangely, you feel compelled to say yes again. Why? Because your brain whispers, I already agreed. I must support this cause. That single small step reshaped your identity, and now you act to remain consistent with the person you believe yourself to be. Salespeople master this hack by first asking you to try a free sample or answer a quick survey. Once you've said yes, it becomes harder to say no to the upsell. Manipulators exploit it in relationships by making tiny demands that escalate into full control. Even cults begin with harmless tasks before asking for total devotion. This works so powerfully because humans fear cognitive dissonance, the discomfort of being inconsistent. Saying yes once plants a seed that grows into loyalty, obedience, and compliance, even when the requests become massive. The danger lies in how invisible the shift feels. You don't notice the trap until you're far from the original step. What felt like a harmless yes becomes a chain of obedience, forged link by link, until breaking free feels harder than continuing forward. Big ask first, then smaller. The human mind is wired to compare, not to measure in isolation. When confronted with a request that feels overwhelming, our instinct is to reject it immediately. But something fascinating happens when, after that big, unreasonable ask, a much smaller request follows. It suddenly feels fair, manageable, even appealing. This is the door-in-the-face technique, a psychological hack that turns rejection into compliance. Imagine asking someone for $500. They laugh, they refuse, they push back. Then, without pause, you follow with, okay, then maybe just $50? The contrast between the two numbers is what matters. The $50 didn't get smaller. It was always the same. But in the shadow of the original $500, it feels light, almost generous. The other person, eager to restore balance after refusing you, is now far more likely to agree. This works because of two deep psychological forces: contrast and guilt. Contrast makes the second request look harmless compared to the first. Guilt emerges because humans hate saying no. Rejecting once creates a subconscious pull to redeem themselves by agreeing the second time. The shift feels like compromise, but it is carefully orchestrated manipulation. Marketers, fundraisers, and negotiators exploit this relentlessly. A company pitches the most expensive package first, only to settle for the mid-tier option you were destined to buy. Charities ask for a huge donation, then humbly request something smaller, which suddenly feels like nothing in comparison. The brilliance of this hack lies in its elegance. The first ask is never meant to succeed. It exists only to make the second irresistible. What feels like fairness is actually leverage, and what feels like compromise is often surrender. Slip compliments casually. A compliment is not just a kind word. It is a psychological key that unlocks trust, softens defenses, and makes people more open to influence. But the real magic happens when a compliment is delivered casually, almost as if it slipped out without effort. When praise feels unplanned and natural, it bypasses suspicion and lands directly in the heart. The recipient doesn't question your motive. Instead, they absorb the warmth, letting it shape how they see you and themselves. Imagine telling someone, "You always have such sharp insights," as if you barely noticed yourself saying it before moving right back into the flow of conversation. That subtlety is what makes it powerful. A casual compliment feels authentic because it doesn't scream for attention. It weaves itself into the fabric of the interaction. The person on the other end holds onto it tightly, replaying it later when you're not around. This works because humans are starved for recognition. We crave validation, often more than we admit, and when it comes unexpectedly, it strikes deeper. A forced or exaggerated compliment triggers doubt. Are they trying to get something from me? But a casual one feels like truth whispered rather than shouted. Salespeople use this to make clients feel understood. Leaders use it to inspire loyalty. Manipulators use it to disarm. The delivery is everything. Too direct, and it feels manipulative. Too frequent, and it loses its edge. But slipped in gently, almost unnoticed, it works like a secret code, rewriting the way someone feels about you, making them not only like you, but want to agree with you, trust you, and follow your lead. Confidence beats accuracy. In the strange theater of human psychology, truth often takes a backseat to certainty. People don't always follow the one who is correct. They follow the one who believes they are correct. Confidence is magnetic, intoxicating, and persuasive in a way that raw accuracy can never match. When someone speaks with unshakable conviction, the human brain interprets it as authority, as leadership, as truth, even when the words themselves are riddled with error. This happens because deep inside, we crave certainty more than we crave accuracy. Uncertainty feels dangerous. It leaves us exposed and vulnerable. When someone radiates absolute confidence, it soothes that primal fear, giving us the illusion of safety. We trust the steady voice over the hesitant one, the firm gaze over the doubtful glance. Our subconscious whispers, "If they're this sure, they must know something I don't." History is littered with examples of this psychological trap. Charismatic leaders swayed nations not with facts, but with unwavering certainty. Salespeople close deals by sounding absolutely sure the product is life-changing, even if the details blur. In social circles, the loud, confident voice often drowns out the quiet genius in the corner. Accuracy becomes irrelevant when the crowd has already decided who sounds right. This hack is both powerful and dangerous. Confidence can propel you into positions of influence and make your words carry weight far beyond their factual value. But it is also the weapon of manipulators, those who cloak lies in certainty. The unsettling truth is this: people don't follow truth. They follow the illusion of truth wrapped in the armor of confidence. Eye contact signals honesty. The eyes are windows to the soul, or at least that's what our instincts make us believe. From birth, humans are wired to interpret eye contact as a signal of truth, trust, and emotional connection. When someone looks us directly in the eyes, our subconscious translates it as confidence and sincerity, even if the words being spoken are pure deception. Eye contact bypasses rational analysis, tapping into primal instincts that link gaze with safety and honesty. Think about the moments that feel most intimate: a lover's lingering stare, a child gazing up at a parent, a friend holding your eyes during a vulnerable confession. These experiences etch into our brain that eye contact equals authenticity. That's why speakers who maintain steady eye contact appear more trustworthy. Leaders who meet the gaze of their followers inspire loyalty, and strangers who lock eyes briefly feel instantly connected. But this is exactly why manipulators exploit it. Con artists, liars, and master persuaders know that if they hold your gaze, your defenses soften. The brain floods with unconscious cues. They must be telling the truth. They're not afraid. They're confident. Even when the logic doesn't line up, the eyes override doubt. Eye contact hypnotizes because it taps into something far older than language, the survival mechanism of reading another's intent through their gaze. Yet, there's a delicate balance. Too little eye contact feels evasive, too much feels predatory, but just the right amount, held long enough to feel authentic, convinces the mind that what you're hearing is real. This is the silent weapon of persuasion, a gaze that convinces your subconscious long before your conscious mind catches up. Rhymes feel more truthful. The human mind is addicted to patterns, and among the most seductive of patterns is rhyme. When words flow in rhythm, our brains light up with pleasure, recognition, and ease of recall. A phrase that rhymes feels polished, complete, and strangely convincing, even if the logic behind it is weak or entirely false. This is known as the rhyme as reason effect, and it has been used for centuries to slip ideas past critical thinking and lodge them deep in memory. Consider how slogans, proverbs, and political chants often rhyme. If the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. This single line, delivered during a famous trial, had more persuasive power than hours of evidence. The rhyme didn't prove anything. It simply made the idea sound undeniable. Advertisers harness it too. Catchy jingles and rhyming taglines bypass skepticism because they feel good to hear. The brain equates fluency with truth, mistaking smoothness for substance. The emotional trigger lies in how rhyme mimics music. Music has always been tied to survival. Songs bonded tribes, taught lessons, and carried traditions. When words rhyme, they awaken that same ancient trust. They feel safer, wiser, more certain. We don't just remember them, we believe them. This is why manipulative leaders, cult figures, and marketers rely on rhymes to hypnotize crowds. Once repeated, the rhyme etches itself into the subconscious, echoing long after the words are gone. The danger is that truth becomes irrelevant. What matters is the rhythm. A clever rhyme can make a lie sound eternal, and once it sticks, peeling it from the mind becomes almost impossible. Scarcity increases desire. The human mind is magnetized by what it cannot have. Scarcity transforms ordinary things into treasures, not because their value has changed, but because the chance to obtain them feels like it is slipping away. When something is rare, limited, or vanishing, the brain interprets it as urgent and essential. It is survival instinct disguised as desire. Our ancestors knew that what was scarce in the wild, food, water, safety, was worth fighting for. That wiring remains, and it is exploited every single day. Marketers wield scarcity like a blade, limited time only 3 seats left, while supplies last. These phrases hijack the brain, creating anxiety, pushing you to act before logic has a chance to intervene. The product itself may be no different than thousands of others, but when it feels like it is running out, it suddenly becomes irresistible. The fear of missing out overwhelms reason, and people chase the fleeting object, not out of need, but out of desperation. Scarcity also fuels attraction in relationships. A person who is hard to reach, who withholds attention or time, often becomes more desirable than the one who is always available. Distance creates mystery, and mystery sharpens desire. We crave what feels elusive, confusing absence with value. The dark truth is that scarcity bends behavior in ways people don't notice. It drives reckless purchases, impulsive decisions, and blind loyalty. The very moment something becomes hard to get, we stop asking if it's worth wanting. Scarcity blinds us, twisting longing into urgency, and urgency into action we may later regret. People copy others' actions. Human beings are herd creatures, far more influenced by the movements of those around them than we care to admit. When we see someone else perform an action, our brains light up as though we are doing it ourselves. This is the silent grip of social proof, the invisible force that drives people to follow the crowd, to mirror behaviors, to conform without ever realizing why. Think about laughter in a room. One person chuckles, and suddenly the entire group erupts, even if half of them didn't hear the joke. Or yawning, that irresistible contagion that spreads like wildfire. These are not accidents. They are echoes of the subconscious need to belong. Copying others is a survival mechanism, an ancient instinct rooted in the fact that safety once depended on moving with the tribe. To stray was to risk death, so to mimic was to live. This hack is ruthlessly exploited in modern life. Marketers flood products with fake reviews, knowing people will buy what others appear to love. Clubs manufacture long lines outside their doors, signaling popularity so passersby feel compelled to join. Social media thrives on this law. Likes, shares, and trends pull millions into copying behaviors they might never have chosen alone. The most unsettling part is how automatic it is. People copy not just actions, but energy, attitudes, and even beliefs. One confident leader can infect a crowd with determination, just as one panicked individual can ignite fear in thousands. To copy is to connect, but it is also to surrender. The terrifying truth is this: the moment one person acts, others will follow, sometimes blindly, sometimes fatally. First number anchors deals. The first number spoken in any negotiation is not just a figure. It is an anchor, a psychological chain that drags every following thought closer to its weight. The human mind is terrible at evaluating value in isolation. Instead, it clings to the first reference point it sees and builds the rest of its reasoning around it. This is why the very first number in a deal has extraordinary power. It sets the battlefield before the fight has even begun. Picture a seller naming a price far above what they truly expect. Instantly, the buyer's mind orbits around that inflated figure. Even if they push back, their counter will be higher than if the seller had started lower. The anchor has already pulled them upward. The same happens in reverse. A buyer who begins with a ridiculously low offer drags the seller's expectations down, framing every higher number as reasonable. This trick works because the brain craves shortcuts. Instead of calculating value from scratch, it latches onto the first number as a compass, even when it's irrational. Studies show that people asked whether Gandhi was older or younger than 144 when he died gave higher age estimates than those asked if he was older or younger than 9. The absurd anchor warped their sense of truth. In business, politics, and sales, anchoring is a weapon. Whoever speaks first sets the reference point, forcing the other side to negotiate inside invisible walls. What feels like free choice is really just orbit around the first number. Proof that, in deals, perception of value matters more than value itself. Loss framing motivates action. Nothing grips the human heart more fiercely than the fear of losing what we already have. Psychologists call this loss aversion, and it is one of the most powerful motivators of human behavior. The pain of loss burns twice as strong as the pleasure of gain. Offer someone the chance to win $100 and they may hesitate, but warn them they will lose $100 if they don't act, and suddenly urgency takes over. This hack works because survival is etched into our biology. For our ancestors, losing food, shelter, or safety could mean death. That ancient wiring still governs us today. Modern life has replaced predators with deadlines, opportunities, and financial stakes, but the emotional circuitry hasn't changed. Losing feels unbearable, and we will do almost anything to avoid it. Marketers exploit this mercilessly. Only 3 seats left. Offer ends tonight. Don't miss out. Each phrase frames the situation not as a potential gain, but as a looming loss. Investors hold on to failing stocks because selling feels like losing. Lovers cling to toxic relationships because leaving feels like surrendering something they once had. Even in simple conversations, reframing your words to highlight what someone risks losing makes compliance almost inevitable. The emotional hook is raw and primal. Loss doesn't just sting, it lingers, carving itself deeper into memory than any victory. When people sense something slipping through their fingers, adrenaline surges, rational thought blurs, and decisions are made in desperation. Gains may tempt us, but it is the shadow of loss, the dread of what we stand to forfeit, that drives us to act with speed, intensity, and sometimes recklessness. Stories beat facts. The human brain was not built to memorize numbers or absorb cold data. It was built to live and breathe through stories. From the earliest firesides of our ancestors, tales of survival, danger, and triumph were passed down, not as sterile facts, but as living narratives that carried emotion, meaning, and memory. A story does what facts cannot. It bypasses logic and dives straight into the heart. When someone tells you statistics, you might nod politely, but the numbers fade quickly. Yet when they tell you about a mother working 3 jobs to feed her children, that image burns itself into your memory. Stories engage more areas of the brain than facts. They activate imagination, empathy, and even motor responses, making you feel as though you are experiencing the events yourself. It is why you cry at movies, even though you know they aren't real, and why one vivid personal story can change your mind more than mountains of evidence. This is why leaders, politicians, and advertisers rely on storytelling. They know the brain clings to narrative like a lifeline. A single emotional story can shape belief systems, influence votes, or inspire action more powerfully than endless data ever could. Facts may inform, but stories persuade. Facts speak to the mind, but stories command the soul. And the most dangerous part? A story doesn't need to be true to work. It only needs to feel real. Wrapped in emotion, it slides past skepticism and lodges itself deep in memory. Once it takes root, it becomes stronger than fact, because people would rather believe what moves them than what merely informs them. Break eye contact for impact. Eye contact is one of the most intimate forms of unspoken communication, and most people believe that holding it endlessly is the key to persuasion. But the real power lies not in constant gaze. It lies in the moment you deliberately break it. When you lock eyes, you create tension, intensity, connection. And when you suddenly look away, you leave a void that the other person's mind scrambles to fill. That pause makes your last words echo louder, burning themselves deeper into memory. Think of it during an argument or a pitch. You deliver your key point, your eyes steady and unwavering, and then you break away, letting silence and absence hang in the air. That gesture signals finality, authority, and weight. The listener feels the shift, as if you've placed a period at the end of a sentence too heavy to ignore. Their subconscious whispers, what they just said must matter. Actors, leaders, and manipulators use this without mercy. A politician delivering a promise will lock eyes with the crowd, then glance down or away just as the applause rises, cementing the idea with a subtle exclamation point. A negotiator will lean in, hold eye contact while laying down terms, and then break away, forcing the other side to sit with the gravity of those words. The human brain is wired to seek meaning in every gesture, and when eye contact is broken with precision, it doesn't feel like detachment. It feels like impact. It transforms a simple statement into a declaration, a fleeting look into a lingering presence, making the silence after your gaze more persuasive than any argument could ever be. Direct gaze wins help. When you desperately need help, the secret is not in your words, it's in your eyes. A direct gaze pierces through the noise, locking someone into an unspoken bond that demands attention. Humans are social creatures wired to respond to eye contact as a primal signal of connection, need, and urgency. Looking directly into someone's eyes while asking for help transforms your request from a casual favor into a deeply personal appeal. Imagine standing in a crowded street, calling out for assistance without locking eyes with anyone. People pass, pretending not to notice, their sense of responsibility diffused among the crowd. Now imagine the opposite. You lock eyes with a single person, your gaze steady, vulnerable, unshakable. In that moment, the bystander effect shatters. The request is no longer abstract. It is directed, personal, unavoidable. The person feels chosen, obligated, bound by your stare. This works because eye contact triggers empathy at a subconscious level. Mirror neurons activate, and suddenly your urgency becomes theirs. The gaze bypasses excuses and pierces the thin veil of indifference. Even if they want to ignore you, the weight of that silent connection makes it almost impossible to walk away. Politicians use this when addressing audiences, locking eyes with individuals to make their message feel personal. Beggars, salespeople, and even children intuitively know that when they look you in the eyes, resistance weakens. A direct gaze says, "I see you, now you see me," and in that exchange, help becomes less of a choice and more of a human compulsion. It is one of the purest, most primal triggers of compliance. Warm drinks equals warm feelings. A simple cup of coffee or tea in your hands can change the way your brain judges another person. This isn't metaphor, it's psychology. The sensation of physical warmth on the skin activates the same neural pathways linked to emotional warmth, comfort, and trust. Holding something warm doesn't just heat your body, it softens your perception, making others seem kinder, safer, and more likable. Researchers discovered that when people held a warm drink, they rated strangers as more generous and approachable compared to those holding iced drinks. The temperature in their hands shaped the temperature of their judgments. It's a primitive reflex, rooted in the earliest bonds of survival. As infants, warmth meant life. It meant being held, protected, and fed. That deep connection between heat and security never leaves us. Even as adults, warmth still signals safety, trust, and belonging. This is why business meetings over coffee feel smoother, why dates in cozy cafes spark intimacy, and why offering someone a hot drink can lower their guard. The warmth transfers from the cup to the heart, making everything in the interaction feel more genuine. The brain doesn't separate the sensation of heat from the perception of human character. It blends them into a single emotional judgment. Manipulators exploit this without a word. They choose warm rooms, offer hot beverages, and use heat itself as a silent ally in persuasion. It feels innocent, almost invisible, yet its influence runs deep. A handshake may build trust, but a steaming mug handed at the right moment can dissolve suspicion faster than any speech ever could. Fast talk equals smart, slow equals authority. The speed of your voice has the power to alter how people perceive you before they even process your words. Speak quickly, and you radiate intelligence, energy, and sharpness. People assume you know what you're talking about because your mind seems to be moving too fast to stumble. It creates the illusion of quick wit and confidence, making listeners believe they are in the presence of someone sharp, someone who thinks on their feet. This is why fast talkers often dominate debates or negotiations. They overwhelm doubt with speed, leaving little space for questioning. But slow speech carries a different kind of dominance. When you deliberately slow down your words, each sentence lands heavier, carrying more gravity. The silence between phrases creates tension, forcing the listener to lean in, to hang on your words. Authority lives in the pause. Great leaders and public speakers understand this. Martin Luther King Jr., Winston Churchill, and countless others shaped history not by racing through their speeches, but by giving their words room to breathe. A slow voice says, "I don't need to rush because my words matter too much to hurry." The paradox is that both styles work, but in different ways. Fast speech convinces the mind, sparking excitement and the sense that you're clever. Slow speech commands the soul, building respect and authority that demands obedience. The manipulation lies in choosing which mask to wear. When you want to dazzle, you accelerate. When you want to dominate, you drag every word like a weight across the room, leaving no space for doubt, only the echo of your control. Use names often. A name is never just a word. It is the core of a person's identity, the sound they have heard since childhood, the anchor of their existence. When you use someone's name, you awaken something primal inside them, the need to feel recognized, valued, and significant. People may forget what you say, but they will never forget how it feels to hear their own name fall from your lips with intention. Imagine being in a crowded room, noise swirling everywhere, yet your head snaps the moment someone says your name. That reaction is no accident. It is your brain's reticular activating system filtering chaos to highlight the sound most tied to you. It is proof that your name bypasses distractions, slicing straight into attention. When used often in conversation, it keeps people engaged, makes them feel seen, and forges a bond deeper than any generic compliment ever could. Influencers of all kinds exploit this hack. Salespeople sprinkle names into pitches to create the illusion of friendship. Leaders repeat names in speeches to make audiences feel personally addressed. Even manipulators lean on it, weaving names into conversation to soften defenses and stir subconscious trust. Each repetition pulls the listener closer, convincing them you are not just speaking, you are speaking to them. But the true power of using names is emotional. It whispers validation, it strokes ego, it signals importance. To ignore a name is to overlook a soul. To use it is to awaken it. Every time you say it, you give the person a surge of recognition that makes them more receptive, more open, more willing to follow where you lead. Small favors build liking. It feels backwards, but psychology reveals a strange truth. People like you more after they do something for you. This paradox is called the Ben Franklin effect, named after the founding father who discovered its power when he asked a rival to lend him a rare book. The man, flattered by the request, complied, and, to Franklin's surprise, became warmer and friendlier toward him afterward. A simple favor transformed hostility into connection. The reason is buried deep in the mind's obsession with consistency. When someone does a favor for you, their brain searches for a justification. Why would I help this person? Instead of admitting it was random or meaningless, the mind reframes the act. I must like them. That's why I helped. The favor plants a seed of affection that grows stronger each time they comply again. This is why manipulators and influencers start small. They ask you to hold a door, share a pen, or give a quick opinion. Once you say yes, the groundwork for liking has been laid. Soon, bigger favors feel natural because the brain resists the discomfort of admitting, I've been helping someone I don't even like. Instead, it rewrites the story. You must like them because your actions say so. The effect is subtle but magnetic. Salespeople use it to inch closer to the sale, leaders to win loyalty, and manipulators to weave invisible strings of control. What begins as a harmless request becomes the foundation of attachment, proving that sometimes the fastest way to make someone like you isn't to do something for them, but to let them do something for you. Lower tone for authority. The voice is more than sound. It is power. When you lower your tone, even slightly, you command a presence that words alone cannot achieve. A deeper voice resonates with authority, dominance, and certainty. It carries weight, wrapping your message in an invisible cloak of credibility that people instinctively obey. The shift is subtle, but the impact is primal. Studies reveal that leaders with lower voices are judged as stronger, more competent, and more trustworthy. In politics, candidates with deeper tones often win more votes. In business, executives who speak with gravity command respect before their ideas are even evaluated. This hack works because our brains evolved to equate low frequencies with strength. Thunder signals storms, growls warn of predators, and the rumble of a deeper voice subconsciously signals power. When you lower your tone at the end of a sentence, it anchors your words with finality. The message doesn't just linger, it settles into the listener's mind as truth. People are less likely to interrupt, challenge, or dismiss someone whose voice conveys dominance. The same sentence spoken in a high tone feels uncertain. Spoken in a low tone, it feels like law. But there's more than dominance at play. A low, steady tone also conveys calm, control, and protection. It makes others feel secure in your presence, as if you are steady when they are not. This is why negotiators, leaders, and manipulators deliberately drop their pitch when they want to steer emotions. Authority is not just claimed through titles. It is spoken into existence, embedded in the vibration of every word. Attractive equals assumed competent. Beauty is more than skin deep. It bends perception, rewrites judgment, and tricks the mind into believing what is not earned. When someone is attractive, we subconsciously grant them traits they may not possess: intelligence, kindness, competence, leadership. This is the halo effect, a distortion where physical appearance casts a glow over everything else. A symmetrical face, a confident smile, a well-kept body, they become symbols of capability, even when no evidence exists. In the workplace, this hack is devastatingly powerful. Attractive people are more likely to be hired, promoted, and listened to. Their mistakes are forgiven faster, their successes praised louder. In politics, the candidate with sharper features and charm often beats the one with better policies. In classrooms, teachers unconsciously rate attractive students as smarter. It is not merit, it is biology. Our brains associate beauty with health, strength, and survival, remnants of primal instincts that once kept us alive. But beneath the surface lies manipulation. Advertisers know a pretty face can sell anything, from soap to cars to lies. Con artists weaponize attractiveness to win trust before the deception unfolds. Leaders bask in credibility they may not deserve, carried forward not by skill, but by looks that trigger unconscious bias. The emotional hook is this: we all want to believe beauty equals goodness because it feels safe. To follow the attractive is to trust what seems strong, what seems pure, what seems ideal. Yet the truth is harsher. Beauty blinds. It clouds judgment, pulls loyalty, and makes us mistake charm for substance. And once that illusion takes root, people will defend it fiercely, even in the face of undeniable failure. Handwriting improves memory. In a world where screens dominate every second of our lives, The act of putting pen to paper feels almost archaic, yet it unlocks something no keyboard ever can. Handwriting is more than scribbling words. It is a physical dance between thought and movement, embedding ideas deeper into the mind. When you write by hand, your brain doesn't just record information, it experiences it. Every curve, every stroke, every pause sends signals that engrave the memory into your neural pathways. Typing is mechanical, uniform, effortless. Handwriting, however, demands focus. It slows you down, forcing your mind to absorb, translate, and process the meaning behind every word. That slowness is the secret. It transforms passive note-taking into active engagement. You don't just copy information, you internalize it, making it part of you. This is why students who handwrite their notes outperform those who type. They are not simply recording words, they are carving them into memory. But the effect goes deeper than learning. Writing by hand triggers emotion. A handwritten letter feels alive in ways a text never can. A journal entry captures not just words, but the mood, the rhythm, the intensity of the moment. Even doodles in the margins become memory cues, anchors to recall details long forgotten. Handwriting also awakens parts of the brain linked to creativity and imagination. It turns abstract thought into tangible marks, binding mind and body in a loop of focus and retention. That's why great thinkers, from philosophers to poets, relied on pen and paper to capture genius. In the silent scratch of ink across a page lies a forgotten truth. To write by hand is to remember more deeply, to feel more fully, to think more clearly. Mistakes feel bigger than they are. When you make a mistake, it feels like the world is staring, every eye locked on your slip, every whisper about you. This crushing illusion is called the spotlight effect, and it tricks your brain into believing your errors are magnified under a blinding spotlight for all to see. In reality, most people barely notice, and those who do quickly forget. But inside your mind, the mistake explodes into shame and self-consciousness. The reason lies in the way the human brain is wired. We are the center of our own universe, so naturally, we assume others are just as focused on us as we are. That bias distorts perspective. A stumble in a presentation feels catastrophic. A wrong word in conversation feels unforgettable. A stain on your shirt feels like a neon sign screaming embarrassment. Yet for everyone else, it's just a passing detail, gone in seconds. Psychologists have shown that people consistently overestimate how much others notice their flaws. What feels like a humiliating disaster to you barely registers to others. The audience forgets, strangers move on, but the mind replays it again and again, inflating it, feeding the anxiety that you've revealed weakness. This hack becomes dangerous when used against you. Manipulators exploit your fear of exposure, knowing embarrassment makes you compliant and eager to please. They remind you of your slip-ups, keeping you small, keeping you obedient. The truth, however, is that your mistakes live louder in your head than anywhere else. Most people aren't watching. They're too busy worrying about their own spotlight, trapped in the same illusion that enslaves you. Because boosts compliance. One simple word can bend resistance and open doors that logic alone cannot. Because it is more than a connector. It is a psychological trigger that flips a switch in the human brain, making people far more likely to comply. When we hear because, our minds relax, expecting justification. Even if the reason that follows is weak, the very presence of an explanation feels sufficient to warrant agreement. Experiments prove this with chilling clarity. In a famous study, participants who tried to cut in line at a photocopier had far greater success when they added the word because. Saying, "May I cut in line because I'm in a rush?" was powerful, but shockingly, even nonsense worked. "May I cut in line because I need to make copies?" Compliance skyrocketed, not because the reason mattered, but because the brain latched onto the structure of explanation. Why does this hack work so relentlessly? Humans crave cause and effect. Our survival depended on knowing why things happen, so we evolved to obey when given a reason, however trivial. Hearing because tricks the subconscious into skipping critical thought and sliding straight into agreement. It feels like order instead of chaos, certainty instead of doubt. Manipulators, leaders, and salespeople exploit this reflex constantly. Buy this product because it will make life easier. Support this cause because everyone else is. The reasoning doesn't need to be airtight. The word alone cloaks the request in legitimacy. The terrifying truth is that because is often enough. With it, resistance crumbles. Without it, even the strongest argument can feel hollow. The mind doesn't just hear the word, it surrenders to it. Ask why to cement behavior. The single word why has the power to lock a person into their choices more strongly than persuasion ever could. When you ask someone why they did something, you force them to justify their behavior, not to you, but to themselves. And once they give a reason, even a flimsy one, the act becomes part of their identity. They are no longer just doing something, they are the kind of person who does it. This is the trap of self-justification. Imagine asking a child why they shared their toy. They might say, "Because I'm nice." In that instant, the act of sharing fuses with the identity of being nice, making them more likely to repeat it. The same happens with adults. Ask someone why they donated, why they helped, why they agreed, and their answer cements the behavior in their own mind. They don't want to contradict themselves later, because humans crave consistency. Manipulators exploit this relentlessly. Salespeople ask, "Why do you like this product?" The customer's answer, "Because it feels reliable," becomes the anchor, making them more likely to buy. Leaders ask, "Why do you support this cause?" And suddenly, the supporter is locked in, because to back away would mean betraying their own declared values. The emotional sting is that most people don't notice the trap. Once you've said why, you've drawn a line in the sand, and your subconscious will fight to stay on that side. It's not the action that keeps you loyal. It's the story you tell yourself about who you are, and that story, once spoken, can hold you tighter than any chain. Less complaining equals higher status. Every word you speak shapes how others perceive you, and nothing erodes respect faster than constant complaining. Complaints broadcast helplessness, weakness, and lack of control. They signal to the world that you are a victim of circumstance rather than a master of it. People instinctively pull away from complainers because negativity is contagious. It drains energy and drags everyone into the same pit of dissatisfaction. But those who hold their tongue, those who resist the urge to whine, radiate something far more powerful: authority. When you complain less, people subconsciously assign you higher status. You appear composed, in control, and above the petty frustrations that consume others. It creates an aura of resilience, as though you are unshaken by the turbulence that rattles the average person. This quiet strength is magnetic. It draws people to you, not because you demand attention, but because you exude stability in a world where most crumble under pressure. Leaders, influencers, and high achievers understand this hack deeply. They may feel the same frustrations as everyone else, but they rarely voice them publicly. Instead, they speak of solutions, opportunities, and direction. This subtle shift transforms them from complainers into commanders, from passive participants into shapers of reality. The fewer complaints they voice, the more their words carry weight when they finally do speak. The human mind craves strength to follow, and silence in the face of hardship is often mistaken for strength itself. Those who complain less project unspoken dominance. They command respect not by loud declarations, but by the discipline of restraint, proving that the absence of negativity can be more powerful than words themselves. Whispering draws attention. There is something almost magnetic about a whisper. When words are lowered to a hush, the human brain reacts instantly. sharpening focus and leaning in, desperate not to miss a single syllable. Whispering creates intimacy, urgency, and mystery all at once. It tells the listener, this is secret, this is special, this is for you and you alone. Even in a crowded room, a whisper can slice through noise more effectively than a shout because it forces the mind to strain, to tune in, to give undivided attention. Psychologically, whispering hijacks two primal instincts, survival and belonging. In our evolutionary past, whispers signaled danger or critical information shared within a tribe. To ignore them meant exclusion, or worse, death. That wiring remains, making whispers feel impossible to dismiss. They create a heightened state of awareness, triggering adrenaline and curiosity. You don't just hear a whisper, you feel it. This is why lovers whisper in moments of intimacy, why conspirators bend close, why leaders sometimes lower their voices instead of raising them. The contrast between normal speech and a sudden hush jolts the brain, demanding focus. Even teachers have discovered that lowering their voices commands more attention from students than shouting ever could. But whispers can also be weapons. Manipulators whisper to plant seeds of doubt, to spread rumors, to bind their victim in secrecy. They exploit the trust that a whisper creates, making lies feel more believable simply because they were spoken softly, privately. A whisper is not just sound, it's a psychological hook, pulling the listener deeper, convincing them that what they're hearing matters more than anything else in the room. Tired minds agree easier. Exhaustion is more than physical. It is psychological surrender. When the mind is tired, its defenses weaken, judgment blurs, and resistance softens. The ability to analyze, question, and argue fades, leaving behind a mind that craves only one thing: relief. In this vulnerable state, agreement feels easier than conflict. Compliance feels safer than resistance, and the simplest path is to nod along, even against one's better interests. This is why interrogations often drag on late into the night. A suspect who resists for hours may finally confess, truthfully or falsely, just to escape the grinding fatigue. Negotiators schedule meetings late in the day, knowing mental exhaustion makes counterparts pliable. Advertisers flood the late-night airwaves with persuasive pitches, counting on weary viewers to surrender their wallets without much thought. Fatigue sabotages critical thinking because the brain's energy reserves are not limitless. Self-control, logic, and willpower draw from the same fuel tank, and when it runs low, emotions and shortcuts take over. A tired mind avoids effort, and arguing takes effort. Saying yes is the path of least resistance, and so people say it, agreeing to things they might firmly reject when fully alert. The emotional sting lies in how invisible this trap is. Most don't realize that their exhaustion is being weaponized against them. They think they are choosing freely, when in reality, they are simply too drained to fight back. In the haze of fatigue, compliance feels like peace, and manipulators know that nothing is easier to control than a mind desperate for rest. Food softens people. There is something primal about sharing food that melts away resistance and lowers defenses. From ancient tribes gathered around fires to modern families at dinner tables, food has always been more than sustenance. It is a bridge of trust. When people eat together, barriers crumble. Negotiations turn friendlier, conversations become warmer, and judgments soften. A simple meal can change the entire atmosphere of human connection. Psychologists have found that people are more agreeable, more open to influence, and more likely to say yes when eating. The act of chewing, the comfort of taste, and the sensory pleasure of nourishment distract the brain from suspicion. Hunger sharpens irritation, but food soothes it. That's why important deals are struck over lunch instead of in offices, and why dates happen at restaurants rather than in sterile meeting rooms. The ritual of eating sends a subconscious message. We are safe, we are allies, we are sharing life itself. This effect is so powerful that even something small, a coffee, a piece of chocolate, a casual snack, can disarm tension. A manager delivering criticism during lunch will face less backlash. A salesperson offering a drink sets the stage for an easier yes. Food is not just fuel, it is a tool of influence hidden in plain sight. The emotional pull is undeniable. Eating together feels intimate. It creates a bond of belonging that words cannot replicate. In that shared moment, suspicion weakens and the mind becomes pliable. The meal nourishes the body, but it also feeds trust, turning hardened stances into softened agreements without the other person ever realizing why. Nod while asking favors. When you ask someone for a favor, the power of your words is only half the battle. The other half lies in what your body whispers. A simple nod, timed with your request, can tilt the odds of hearing yes in your favor. Human beings are natural imitators, wired to mirror the actions of those around them. When you nod as you speak, you're not just emphasizing your words. You're planting a suggestion in the listener's subconscious, coaxing their head to follow yours. Picture it. You lean in slightly, voice calm, and say, "Could you help me with this?" As your head dips in a gentle nod, the other person feels an almost invisible pull, a strange pressure to align with your rhythm. Before they even process your request fully, their body wants to respond in kind, to nod back, to agree. It's not logic that drives their answer, it's mimicry, the silent chain reaction of human psychology. This technique works because the brain equates agreement with safety. Seeing someone nod creates an unconscious signal. This is right, this is acceptable, this is safe. Politicians use it during speeches, salespeople use it during pitches, and skilled persuaders weave it into conversations so subtly that their targets never notice. The nod is a cue, a nonverbal command disguised as a gesture of affirmation. The danger lies in how quietly it operates. Most people never realize they've been nudged toward compliance by something as small as a nod, yet the effect lingers, making it one of the most understated but powerful hacks of influence, a silent head tilt that turns hesitation into agreement without a single word more. Smile changes voice warmth. A smile is more than a curve of the lips. It reshapes your entire presence, even when unseen. When you smile while speaking, your voice softens, warms, and carries a magnetic quality that listeners feel instantly. The muscles used in smiling subtly alter the tone of your speech, adding brightness and sincerity that the human ear instinctively detects. Even over the phone, where no one can see you, people can hear a smile, and it makes them more open, trusting, and receptive. This effect works because the brain is hardwired to connect vocal tone with emotion. From infancy, we learn to interpret warmth, safety, and affection through sound. A smiling voice activates the same feelings as a comforting embrace or a reassuring glance. It signals friendliness, approachability, and care. That unconscious recognition makes people lean in, listen longer, and feel good in your presence. But beneath this warmth lies a potent tool of influence. Customer service agents are trained to smile because it calms angry callers. Salespeople smile while describing products to make them sound more appealing. Manipulators smile as they speak to coat deception in honey, their words sliding past suspicion because the voice delivering them feels kind and safe. A smile in the voice doesn't just influence how others perceive you, it alters how you feel yourself. Smiling triggers endorphins and reduces stress, meaning your tone naturally shifts into something more relaxed and confident. The voice becomes not just sound, but energy, transmitting emotional warmth that bypasses logic and strikes directly at the subconscious. A simple smile can turn ordinary words into a melody of persuasion. Match breathing for trust. Breath is the most primal rhythm of life, and when two people align their breathing, something extraordinary happens. A silent bond forms, bypassing words and logic to strike at the core of human connection. Matching someone's breathing is one of the most subtle yet powerful psychological hacks for building trust because it makes the other person's body feel in sync with yours. Without knowing why, they feel closer, safer, and more understood. When you quietly adjust your inhale and exhale to mirror another's, you enter their rhythm. If they breathe deeply and slowly, you follow. If their breathing is fast and shallow, you match it. Within moments, their subconscious recognizes the synchronization as harmony, interpreting it as similarity, kinship, and alignment. Humans are drawn to those who feel familiar, and nothing is more familiar than the cadence of our own breath reflected back to us. This technique is used in therapy, where counselors align their breathing with patients to create trust and open emotional floodgates. It appears in seduction, where two people unconsciously synchronize breathing in moments of intimacy. Negotiators, too, use it as a stealth weapon, slowing their own breath, pulling the other person into calm, and steering emotions without saying a word. The emotional power lies in how invisible it feels. People don't notice breathing alignment consciously, but they feel it, an unshakable sense of being in tune. It creates comfort so deep it dissolves suspicion. Manipulators know that when you breathe like someone, they begin to think like you, trust like you, and follow where you lead. Breath, the silent rhythm of life, becomes the leash of influence. Asking advice builds bonds. There is a hidden power in vulnerability, and few things trigger it more effectively than asking for advice. At first glance, it seems backward. Shouldn't asking for help make you look weak, uninformed, or dependent? Yet psychology proves the opposite. When you seek someone's guidance, you trigger a deep emotional response in them, the desire to feel valued, respected, and important. Suddenly, you are no longer just another person. You are the one who made them feel wise. This hack works because human beings crave significance. We want to matter, to be seen as capable, to have our knowledge appreciated. When you ask someone for advice, you hand them that gift. It flatters them without sounding like flattery. It disarms them without confrontation. And it forges an invisible bond because people feel closer to those who make them feel useful. Psychologists call this the Ben Franklin effect. When we do a favor for someone, we rationalize it by believing we must like them. Asking for advice functions the same way. By helping you, the other person convinces themselves that you are worth investing in. It's not logic, it's emotional alchemy, turning a small request into loyalty. Leaders use this to win allies, salespeople to win clients, even manipulators to build trust they later exploit. A simple, "What would you do?" can flip a skeptic into an ally. The beauty and danger of this hack lies in its elegance. By admitting you don't have all the answers, you plant the seed that someone else does, and in nurturing that seed, they grow closer to you without even realizing why. Energy spreads. Emotions are contagious, and energy is the virus. Walk into a room brimming with laughter, and you feel lighter. Step into one drenched in tension, and your chest tightens before a word is spoken. Humans are wired to absorb and mirror the emotional states of those around them, a survival instinct rooted in ancient tribal life. The energy of one person doesn't stay contained. It ripples outward, infecting the moods, thoughts, and behaviors of everyone within reach. At the heart of this lies our mirror neurons, brain cells that fire when we watch others' actions and emotions. When someone radiates excitement, your brain lights up as if you are excited yourself. When someone radiates despair, your body sinks in response. This automatic imitation happens before logic can intervene. It's why a charismatic leader can ignite a crowd, why a single panic scream can trigger chaos, why a friend's calm presence can soothe your storm. Energy is influence in its rawest form. Politicians use it to electrify rallies. Salespeople use it to pump enthusiasm into buyers. Manipulators use it to drag others into their spiral of fear or anger. You cannot shield yourself completely from another's energy. It seeps through tone, posture, rhythm, and expression until it rewrites the atmosphere around you. This hack is both power and peril. If you radiate confidence, others feel confident. If you radiate anxiety, they absorb it too. The truth is brutal. The emotional state you carry doesn't belong only to you. It leaks, spreads, and multiplies, shaping reality for everyone around you. Whoever masters their own energy masters the emotional climate of every room they enter. Break tasks into threes. The human mind craves simplicity, and nothing feels more natural than the rhythm of three. When tasks are broken into 3 steps, they become digestible, achievable, and strangely satisfying. This is because our brains are wired to process patterns in small chunks. 3 is just enough to feel complete, yet not so overwhelming that it triggers resistance. Too many steps breed paralysis. Too few feel unfinished. But 3 strikes the perfect balance, pulling us forward with momentum. Imagine being asked to tackle a massive project. The weight of it crushes you before you even start. But when reframed into 3 clear steps, beginning, middle, end, the impossible becomes possible. Your brain relaxes, your energy focuses, and suddenly, progress feels within reach. Even in storytelling, speeches, and advertising, the rule of 3 reigns supreme. 3 acts, 3 points, 3 words. It's no accident. 3 is the number that sticks, the number that persuades, the number that moves people to act. Psychologically, breaking tasks into 3s reduces cognitive load. Instead of drowning in endless details, your mind locks onto a pattern it can handle. This makes you not only more productive, but more persuasive. Leaders give directions in 3s because people remember them. Salespeople pitch benefits in 3s because they sound complete. Manipulators use 3s to slip messages into memory where they lodge without effort. The danger is how effortless it feels. When someone frames an idea or task in 3 simple steps, you stop questioning its complexity. You just follow. Your mind craves closure, and the number 3 delivers it. What could have been overwhelming suddenly feels natural, even inevitable, simply because it was broken into 3s. Pauses expose nerves. Every word you speak carries more than meaning. It carries rhythm. When that rhythm falters and a pause lingers too long, the silence screams louder than any sound. Pauses expose nerves because the human brain instinctively associates hesitation with uncertainty. Even if your message is strong, those tiny gaps between sentences betray the tension beneath your surface, telling listeners you're unsure, uncomfortable, or afraid. Picture a negotiation where you're asked a direct question. You know the answer, but you pause, even briefly, to collect yourself. In that fragile moment, the other side smells doubt. They push harder, sensing weakness, assuming you're wavering, or imagine delivering a speech. Your pause stretches, your audience shifts, and suddenly they wonder if you really know what you're talking about. What was meant as a breath becomes a spotlight, magnifying every flicker of insecurity. The mind is addicted to flow. Conversation is expected to move like water, smooth and unbroken. When it doesn't, people notice. A pause interrupts that rhythm, and instead of focusing on your words, they focus on your hesitation. They wonder what you're hiding, or worse, if you even believe in yourself. Manipulators understand this perfectly. They'll stay silent after your pause, stretching the discomfort until you fill it with concessions, excuses, or unplanned truths. What makes this hack so brutal is that it works beneath awareness. Few will consciously accuse you of nervousness, but the impression sticks. A pause doesn't just expose the silence in the room, it exposes the storm inside you, and once it leaks out, it can tilt the entire balance of power against you. People like you more than they admit. Your mind is crueler to you than reality ever is. When you leave a conversation replaying every awkward word, every stumble, every flaw, You believe others saw you as foolish or unlikable. But psychology tells a different story. People actually like you more than they admit, and far more than you think. This is called the liking gap, a powerful illusion where we consistently underestimate how warmly others perceive us. It happens because we live trapped inside our own self-criticism. We obsess over imperfections that others barely notice. Meanwhile, the people we interact with are focused not on our flaws, but on how we made them feel. Were we kind, genuine, present? Those simple acts of human connection linger longer than any slip of the tongue. Yet our brain convinces us we've ruined impressions that, in truth, were far better than we imagined. Experiments have proven this again and again. Strangers who meet and talk consistently believe the other person liked them less than they actually did. The harsh spotlight of self-judgment blinds us from the quiet truth that people are wired to see the good, to crave connection, to want to like and be liked. This hack carries enormous power because it explains why insecurity chains people down. If you underestimate how much people like you, you hold back, shrink, and silence yourself, never realizing you already had their warmth. Manipulators know this too. They exploit your doubt, making you chase approval you already possess. The truth is haunting and liberating. You are liked more than you believe, and your own mind is the only enemy convincing you otherwise. Pair compliments with questions. A compliment on its own feels good, but fleeting. A question on its own demands effort. But when you combine the two, you create a psychological trapdoor that pulls someone deeper into connection without them realizing it. Pairing compliments with questions disarms defenses, making people feel valued while subtly coaxing them to reveal more. It's the perfect balance of flattery and curiosity, a cocktail the human brain finds irresistible. Imagine telling someone, "You explained that really clearly. How did you learn to break things down so well?" Instantly, their guard drops. The compliment makes them feel competent, admired, seen. The follow-up question hooks them into opening up, reinforcing the bond while giving them the pleasure of talking about themselves. The brain lights up with dopamine when praised, and the question extends that glow, keeping the spotlight on them just a little longer. This hack works because people crave validation, and they crave being heard. Compliments satisfy the first need, while questions satisfy the second. Together, they bypass suspicion. If you only compliment, it can feel shallow. If you only question, it can feel interrogating. But woven together, the interaction feels natural, genuine, and deeply engaging. Salespeople use this trick to build trust. That's a smart choice. What made you decide on it? Manipulators use it to extract information while keeping the other person eager to share. In friendships, dating, and business, it creates a sense of closeness that feels unearned but intoxicating. The compliment softens the ego, and the question digs deeper, planting roots of connection before the person even notices they've been drawn in. Silence makes others talk. Silence is not empty, it is pressure. When you resist the urge to fill the air, the weight of that stillness shifts onto the other person, and their instinct is to escape it by speaking. Humans are deeply uncomfortable with conversational voids. We are trained to keep dialogue flowing, to avoid the awkwardness of stillness. When that rhythm is broken, tension rises, and the fastest way to release it is to fill the silence with words. This is why interrogators, therapists, and skilled negotiators use silence as a weapon. They ask a question, then say nothing. Seconds stretch into an eternity, and the person across from them begins to ramble, reveal hidden truths, or over-explain just to break the unbearable quiet. Even in everyday conversations, silence pulls secrets out. A friend who promised to say nothing more suddenly keeps talking. A colleague unsure of their stance keeps justifying. The silence squeezes them until words spill out. Psychologically, silence exploits our fear of judgment. When no response comes, we imagine the other person analyzing us, doubting us, or waiting for something more. That imagined scrutiny drives us to overcompensate. Manipulators love this because it gives them power without effort. The less they speak, the more you reveal. The irony is that silence feels passive, but it is one of the most aggressive tools in communication. It makes people betray their own thoughts, offering more than they intended, all because they couldn't bear the weight of stillness. In the end, silence doesn't just create space, it creates confession. Give two choices, both yours. Choice feels like freedom, but freedom can be an illusion. When you present someone with two options, both carefully crafted to serve your purpose, you create the sensation of control while secretly guiding the outcome. This is the art of the false dilemma, a psychological hack that turns compliance into something that feels like autonomy. People rarely stop to question whether there might be a third path. They simply choose between what's in front of them, believing they've decided for themselves. Parents use this on children all the time. Do you want to go to bed now or in 5 minutes? Either way, the child is going to bed, but framed as a choice, it feels less like an order and more like empowerment. Salespeople exploit it too. Would you like the basic package or the premium? The assumption that no is an option is quietly erased. Politicians, leaders, and manipulators use this same trick to corral people into pre-designed outcomes, while convincing them they had agency all along. This works because the human brain craves certainty. Faced with infinite options, we freeze, overwhelmed. Two choices, however, feel simple, manageable, safe. It reduces anxiety and accelerates decision-making. The mind interprets the structure as generosity. They've given me options, but in reality, both doors lead to the same destination, the one the choice giver wanted all along. The genius of this hack lies in its invisibility. People walk away believing they've made their own decision, not realizing their freedom was engineered. True power isn't forcing someone to obey. It's making them grateful for the privilege of choosing the chains you place before them. Written answers equals more honest. There is a raw honesty in ink and paper that words spoken aloud often lack. When people are asked to write their answers instead of speaking them, the results cut deeper, truer, and far more revealing. This is not an accident. It is psychology. Writing slows the brain, forces reflection, and strips away the protective armor that quick speech provides. The written word becomes a mirror, and in that mirror, the truth leaks out. When speaking, the tongue dances with mass. We edit in real time, dodge, soften, and reshape our thoughts to fit the moment, to please the listener, to protect ourselves. But when we write, the filter weakens. The hand keeps moving. The thoughts spill faster than the walls can rise. The very act of translating thought into words on a page demands honesty, because it is harder to escape your own reflection when it stares back at you in black and white. Interrogators and therapists use this to unlock what speech cannot. A written confession digs deeper. A journal uncovers secrets the writer didn't even know they were keeping. Surveys filled out in private reveal truer opinions than interviews face-to-face. Writing creates distance from judgment, giving the subconscious permission to whisper its truths. But here lies the danger. Manipulators know it too. They coax written answers to extract secrets, to capture vulnerabilities that spoken words would conceal. A written truth lingers, solid, undeniable, a weapon in the wrong hands. Writing doesn't just reveal honesty, it captures it, immortalizes it, making the invisible visible and the unspoken impossible to deny. Red equals dominance. The color red does more than catch the eye. It seizes the mind. Across cultures and history, red has been the color of blood, fire, power, and passion. It signals danger and desire in the same breath, triggering primal instincts buried deep in the human brain. When someone wears red, they don't just stand out, they radiate dominance, authority, and intensity, forcing others to see them as stronger, bolder, and more commanding. Psychologists have found that athletes wearing red uniforms win more often, not because they're better, but because their opponents unconsciously perceive them as more powerful. In dating, red sparks attraction. Men rate women in red as more alluring, while women see men in red as more high status. In business, a splash of red in clothing or branding doesn't just grab attention, it silently asserts confidence and control, making every word that follows land harder. This effect works because red is tied to survival. The brain reacts to it faster than any other color, pumping adrenaline, raising alertness, and sharpening focus. Red is the color of life and death, and so it cannot be ignored. Even in animals, red signals dominance. Think of the fiery displays of birds or the flushed skin of primates asserting rank. Humans are no different. When we see red, we instinctively register strength. But there is danger here too. Manipulators use red to overwhelm, to seduce, to dominate a room without saying a word. A red tie, a red dress, a red logo, each is a psychological weapon that bypasses reason and speaks directly to instinct. Red doesn't ask for attention, it demands it, and once it has your focus, it quietly rewires how you see the person standing before you. Mirror speech style. Words are more than information. They are rhythm, tone, and identity. When you mirror the way someone speaks, you slip past their defenses and create an almost invisible bond. If they speak slowly, you slow down. If they use slang, you match their casual tone. If they speak formally, you adjust to their precision. The effect is powerful because people are wired to trust what feels familiar. When they hear their own style reflected back, their subconscious whispers, "This person is like me." Psychologists call this the communication accommodation effect, and it runs deeper than most realize. Speech is tied to culture, status, and personality. By mirroring it, you signal alignment, whether real or manufactured. A nervous, fast-paced speaker relaxes when you match their tempo. A confident storyteller feels validated when your tone mirrors their energy. Even subtle word choices, like repeating the same phrases or metaphors they use, trigger unconscious trust, as if you share the same world. This technique is used everywhere from politics to sales. Leaders mirror the language of their followers to appear relatable. Salespeople echo customers' words to make their pitch resonate. Manipulators use it to build false intimacy, convincing you that they get you on a deep level when in reality they are weaving a web of control. The reason this works so well is that our brains reward familiarity. Hearing your own cadence in someone else feels like hearing an echo of yourself. And humans are narcissistic by nature. We love what reminds us of us. Done subtly, mirroring speech style doesn't just make people comfortable, it makes them loyal, pliable, and convinced you are someone who truly understands them. Deep voices equals leadership. A voice does more than carry words, it carries power. Across cultures and throughout history, deep voices have been linked to authority, dominance, and leadership. The moment a voice drops lower in pitch, people instinctively lean in, sensing control, confidence, and strength. It isn't learned behavior, it's biological. Studies show that humans subconsciously equate deeper tones with physical size, protection, and command, a survival instinct wired into our DNA from the days when following the strongest meant staying alive. In modern life, this ancient bias still dictates perception. Politicians with deeper voices are rated as more trustworthy and capable. CEOs with lower vocal tones are judged as stronger leaders. Even in everyday conversation, a person who speaks with a steady, deep resonance is more likely to be respected, obeyed, and remembered. The message may be the same, but the sound of it shapes its weight. This is why manipulators and influencers train their voices. Lowering pitch at the end of sentences makes statements sound definitive, unquestionable. Speaking slowly and deeply during tense moments projects calm dominance. even if anxiety churns beneath the surface. Advertisers use deep voice narrators to sell authority. Leaders use it to quiet a room without raising volume. The deep voice doesn't just convey information, it creates gravity. The danger lies in how invisible this bias feels. People rarely admit they judge based on tone, yet their subconscious responds instantly. A deep voice bypasses logic and speaks to something primal, making us follow not necessarily the wisest or most honest, but the one who sounds like a leader. It is proof that influence doesn't always live in words. It often hides in the sound of them. Good moods boost agreement. Happiness is a drug, and when people are under its influence, they say yes more often than no. A good mood loosens the grip of caution, lowers defenses, and makes the mind more open to suggestion. When joy bubbles up, the brain floods with dopamine and serotonin, chemicals that blur risk perception and heighten trust. In this state, compliance comes not from logic, but from feeling, and the brighter the emotion, the weaker the resistance. Imagine a salesman offering a deal while you're frustrated. You scrutinize every detail, searching for flaws. But if he approaches you when you're laughing, relaxed, or celebrating, suddenly the pitch feels lighter, safer, even appealing. The same words land differently because your emotional filter has changed. A happy mind craves harmony, not confrontation, and so it agrees more often just to preserve the bliss. This is why manipulators engineer positive emotions before making their move. They tell jokes, give compliments, play music, or shower you with warmth until you're glowing. Then, while your guard is down, they slip in the request. It feels harmless to comply because your brain is associating their words with the joy they created. Advertisers exploit this too, pairing products with laughter, family, sunshine, teaching your subconscious to say yes before you even think. The danger is subtle but powerful. In good moods, people mistake feelings for facts. They believe they're making rational decisions, when in truth they're simply riding the chemical wave of happiness. And on that wave, saying yes feels natural, almost inevitable, as if resistance itself would break the spell of joy. Real smiles show in eyes. A smile can be faked, but the eyes will always betray the truth. Psychologists call it the Duchenne smile, the difference between a hollow grin and genuine joy. When someone truly feels happiness, the muscles around the eyes contract, creating tiny crinkles and a softness in the gaze that no conscious effort can replicate. The mouth alone can lie, but the eyes reveal the soul, and when people see that light in your eyes, they instinctively trust you more. This happens because humans are experts at reading faces. From infancy, we survive by interpreting micro-expressions, learning to distinguish safety from threat. A forced smile with lips stretched but eyes dead triggers suspicion deep in the subconscious. It feels cold, manipulative, even dangerous, but a real smile ignites warmth, creating instant rapport. It tells the brain, this person is safe, this person is honest, this person is with me. The power of a real smile is profound. Leaders who smile genuinely inspire loyalty. Lovers who share authentic smiles deepen intimacy. Even strangers become approachable simply because the eyes confirm what the lips suggest. Manipulators know this too. Some practice mimicking Duchenne's smiles, trying to fake the spark, but the timing, the energy, the natural glow are nearly impossible to counterfeit perfectly. A real smile doesn't just change how others see you, it changes how they feel. It lowers defenses, raises oxytocin, and forges invisible threads of connection. When joy touches the eyes, it resonates in the hearts of others, bypassing logic and striking directly at the core of human trust. The eyes don't just smile, they speak louder than words ever could. Angled stance feels safer. The way you position your body can change the entire emotional tone of an interaction. Facing someone directly, chest to chest, feels confrontational. It activates primal instincts of challenge, like predators squaring off. But shifting your body just slightly, turning at an angle rather than straight on, instantly dissolves tension and makes the other person feel safer. The difference is subtle, yet the psychological effect is profound. Humans evolved to read body orientation as a signal of intent. A direct stance means full focus, dominance, even aggression. An angled stance, however, communicates openness and reduces perceived threat. It signals, I am not here to attack, I am here to connect. This is why friends chatting side by side feel closer than strangers facing each other head on, and why delicate conversations go smoother when both people sit at an angle rather than across a rigid table. Salespeople and negotiators exploit this hack by deliberately sitting slightly askew, creating a sense of collaboration instead of opposition. Therapists do the same, arranging chairs at gentle angles so clients feel less judged and more willing to open up. Even in arguments, shifting your body sideways softens the energy, pulling the other person away from fight mode and toward dialogue. The real magic is that people rarely notice it consciously. They just feel more at ease, more trusting, less defensive. The stance whispers safety to their subconscious, lowering walls before words even begin. It proves that influence doesn't always come from what you say. Sometimes it comes from the angle of your body, shaping emotion before the conversation has even started. Shared dislikes bond fast. Nothing unites people quicker than a common enemy. Shared dislikes forge bonds faster than shared interests because negative emotions burn hotter, sharper, and deeper than positive ones. When two people discover they dislike the same thing, a rude boss, an unfair system, a hated celebrity, it creates an instant alliance. The brain translates this agreement into trust. If they see the world the same way I do, they must be on my side. This effect is fueled by our survival instincts. In ancient tribes, unity against threats meant safety. Bonding over what we despise taps into that primal need for protection. Gossip spreads faster than praise because it feels dangerous, exciting, and unifying. When we share negativity, we feel closer, as if we're standing shoulder to shoulder against the same storm. Manipulators weaponize this hack with precision. They quickly discover what you dislike, echo your frustrations, and mirror your anger. Suddenly, you feel understood, connected, even loyal to them. Politicians exploit it on a massive scale, rallying entire populations by pointing at a shared enemy. They know hate binds faster than love because fear and anger override reason, pulling people together in fierce solidarity. The danger is that this bond often feels more authentic than it truly is. Positive connections require time, trust, and shared growth. Negative ones ignite instantly, fueled by outrage and resentment, but they can also be shallow, collapsing once the common enemy disappears. Still, in the moment, shared dislike feels electric. Two hearts beating against the same opposition, two minds convinced they've found an ally in the fire of mutual disdain. Predicting boosts follow through. The mind has a strange quirk. When you predict your own behavior, you become far more likely to actually do it. This isn't magic. It's the power of self-commitment. When someone asks, "Do you think you'll vote tomorrow?" and you answer yes, you've already cast a shadow of the action in your mind. Your identity shifts ever so slightly. You are now the kind of person who does this, and when the moment comes, you follow through. Not because of outside pressure, but because breaking your own prediction feels like betraying yourself. Psychologists call this a form of self-prophecy. Once spoken, the forecast hangs heavy in the subconscious. The brain despises inconsistency, so it works to align actions with words. The simple act of prediction becomes a contract, binding you to behave in ways that match the image you've declared. Marketers use this when they ask customers, "Can you see yourself using this product?" Once the customer imagines it, the purchase is almost sealed. Activists use it when they ask, Do you think you'll support this cause? The person says yes, and suddenly donating or volunteering feels inevitable. Even manipulators twist it into a trap, coaxing someone into imagining compliance before demanding it. The danger lies in how invisible it feels. You believe you are freely choosing, yet your own words have already chained you to the decision. By predicting your actions, you carve a path that your future self feels compelled to walk, all to remain consistent with the identity you unconsciously created in a single moment of foresight. Unfinished tasks nag the mind. The mind is a restless machine, and nothing haunts it more than what's left undone. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency to remember incomplete tasks far more vividly than those we finished. An unfinished task gnaws at the subconscious, replaying itself over and over, whispering reminders until it is resolved. It's why a song stuck halfway through loops endlessly in your head, why a project you've put off weighs heavier than one you've completed, and why procrastination feels like carrying a stone in your chest. This happens because the brain craves closure. Starting something creates a psychological tension, a thread pulled tight, demanding resolution. Until that thread is tied off, your mind keeps tugging, refusing to let it slip away. That's why cliffhangers in movies torment us, why writers leave episodes unresolved to guarantee we come back, and why marketers hint at answers without giving them, pulling us deeper into curiosity. The effect is not just annoying, it's powerful. In work, it can keep you awake at night, unable to stop thinking about the email you didn't send or the call you didn't make. In relationships, unresolved conversations loop endlessly, demanding closure that never comes. And manipulators exploit this ruthlessly, dangling unfinished promises or half-revealed truths, knowing your mind will obsess until it gets resolution, even if that means giving them what they want. Unfinished tasks live rent-free in your thoughts, tapping into a primal need for completion. They follow you, pressing on your attention like a wound that refuses to heal, a reminder that until you finish, your mind will not let you rest. Imagine sparks compliance. The word imagine is a doorway to the subconscious, and once it's opened, people step through without realizing how deeply they've been led. When you tell someone to imagine, their brain doesn't just hear your words, it begins to construct vivid mental pictures, pulling them into a reality where your suggestion already feels true. The mind struggles to separate visualization from experience, and that blurring makes compliance almost automatic. Think of a salesperson saying, "Imagine driving this car down the coast, the wind in your hair." Instantly, the buyer is no longer evaluating a product. They're living in a dream where ownership is already real. A manipulator might whisper, "Imagine how much better things would be if you just trusted me." The word bypasses resistance and paints a world where obedience feels not like a demand, but like a natural choice. This hack is powerful because imagination is emotional, not logical. When someone imagines themselves in a scenario, their brain lights up as though it's actually happening. Emotions surge, dopamine spikes, and the line between fantasy and decision collapses. By the time they return to reality, their body has already felt the reward, making agreement far more likely. Leaders, advertisers, seducers all wield this trick. They don't argue, they don't force, they plant visions, and the listener's own mind does the work, creating a future so enticing that compliance feels inevitable. Imagine is not a word, it's a trigger, one that slips past reason and rewires desire, turning resistance into eager participation before logic has a chance to catch up. Repeat for believability. Say something once and it may be ignored. Say it twice and it begins to stick. Say it over and over and it transforms into truth, whether or not it ever was. This is the sinister power of repetition, a psychological trick that turns words into reality simply by echoing them often enough. The brain equates familiarity with accuracy. The more we hear something, the safer and more believable it feels, slipping past critical thought and lodging itself as fact. Advertisers thrive on this. A slogan repeated in every commercial becomes embedded in memory until it feels like common knowledge. Politicians chant phrases, mantras, and promises, not because they hold weight, but because the rhythm of repetition convinces the crowd they must. Even rumors take life this way. Told once, they spark curiosity. Told many times, they morph into undeniable truth. Psychologists call this the illusory truth effect, and it hijacks the brain's need for cognitive ease. Processing something familiar requires less effort, and that ease is mistaken for certainty. The mind whispers, "I've heard this before, so it must be right." Logic is bypassed. Skepticism fades. Repetition wins. The danger lies in how stealthy this trick is. You may think you're too smart to fall for it, yet every repeated phrase leaves a trace, every echo strengthening the illusion. Repetition doesn't just spread messages, it shapes beliefs, identities, even entire societies. In the end, what we call truth is often nothing more than words repeated until doubt has no room left to breathe. Specific thanks hits harder. Gratitude is powerful, but vague gratitude fades like smoke. When someone says, "Thanks, I appreciate it," it feels polite, but it doesn't pierce the heart. Yet when thanks are specific, when someone names exactly what you did and why it mattered, it strikes with far greater force. It doesn't just acknowledge the action, it validates the effort, the intention, the self, and that validation lingers, embedding itself deep in memory. Imagine helping a friend move. A casual, "Thanks for the help," feels ordinary, but if they look you in the eye and say, "Thank you for lifting those heavy boxes when I was exhausted, I couldn't have done it without you," it lands differently. The words don't just thank the deed, they honor your contribution, your presence, your value. The gratitude becomes personal, undeniable, unforgettable. This works because the human brain is starved for recognition. We crave to be seen, not just for what we do, but for the meaning behind it. Specific thanks feeds that hunger, telling the subconscious, "You matter, you made a difference." That spark of significance strengthens bonds, deepens loyalty, and makes people more likely to help again. Manipulators understand this too. They lace their thanks with surgical precision, making you feel indispensable. You don't just feel appreciated, you feel special, chosen, needed, and in that glow, you become easier to sway, more eager to please, more willing to comply. Generic gratitude is forgettable. Specific gratitude is addictive. It doesn't just acknowledge, it engraves itself into the psyche, where the echo of recognition compels you to return, to repeat, to earn that feeling again. Fast replies equals competence. Speed is power in human perception. When someone responds quickly, whether in conversation, over email, or in a high-stakes meeting, their swiftness is read as sharpness, confidence, and competence. A fast reply signals that you know what you're doing, that the answer is second nature to you, that hesitation isn't necessary because you're in control. The human brain equates speed with mastery, assuming that if knowledge or action comes effortlessly, it must come from expertise. Think of the doctor who answers your question before you finish asking, the leader who makes decisions on the spot, the friend who texts back immediately with the right solution. Each rapid response makes you trust them more. The mind whispers, they're competent, they're reliable, they know what they're talking about. Even if their answer isn't perfect, the speed creates an aura of authority that lingers. This effect is amplified because hesitation feels like doubt. Long pauses, delayed replies, or stalling make us question whether someone truly understands. Our instincts have been shaped to see quickness as survival. Those who reacted fast to threats lived, those who hesitated didn't. That ancient wiring still governs how we perceive others today. But here lies the shadow. Manipulators weaponize speed. A fast-talking salesperson overwhelms you before you can think. A scammer replies instantly, creating the illusion of confidence to bypass suspicion. In reality, speed can mask recklessness, but the subconscious rarely questions it. The association is too strong. Quickness feels like competence, and in the theater of human interaction, the person who answers first often becomes the one who is believed. Pause before answering. In a world obsessed with quick replies, silence is power. When you pause before answering, you send a surge of unspoken messages: confidence, control, authority. That brief stillness makes your words feel heavier, more deliberate, as though you are choosing them with precision rather than reacting out of nervousness. It unsettles the other person just enough to shift the balance of power, making them wait for you. The pause works because human beings are uncomfortable with gaps in conversation. Most people rush to fill silence, blurting thoughts before they've even formed, exposing uncertainty and weakness. But when you withhold your words, the tension builds. Suddenly, they lean in, their mind racing, wondering what you're about to say. The silence itself becomes part of the message, wrapping your response in authority before it even leaves your mouth. Psychologically, the pause creates contrast. Words that follow a delay feel more intentional, more important. Leaders use this trick to command rooms. Negotiators use it to make offers land with gravity. Manipulators use it to make lies sound more believable, pausing just long enough to mimic the weight of truth. The stillness disorients the listener, drawing them deeper into your orbit. But the true power of the pause lies in what it does to you. In those few seconds, your racing mind steadies. Emotion cools, clarity rises, and your answer emerges sharper. The pause is both shield and sword. It protects you from reckless words while amplifying the impact of the ones you choose. In conversation, silence isn't absence. It's dominance, disguised as restraint. Too many choices equals regret. Freedom feels intoxicating, but too much of it can become a curse. When the mind is faced with endless options, what should feel liberating instead turns paralyzing. Psychologists call this the paradox of choice. The more options we have, the harder it becomes to decide, and the more regret we feel afterward. The brain drowns in comparison, scanning every possibility, terrified of making the wrong move. Instead of satisfaction, abundance breeds anxiety. Imagine walking into a store to buy jam. Faced with 6 flavors, you choose quickly and leave content. Faced with 30 flavors, suddenly the joy is gone. You agonize, hesitate, and even after choosing, you wonder if you picked the wrong one. The more possibilities there are, the more opportunities for regret. What should feel like empowerment transforms into self-doubt and disappointment. Marketers know this well. They offer just enough choice to create the illusion of freedom, but not so much that the customer freezes. Leaders frame decisions in narrow options so followers feel confident. Manipulators exploit it by overwhelming you with choices. Knowing confusion makes you easier to steer toward the path they want. This works because humans crave certainty more than freedom. We want to feel we've chosen well, but endless options destroy that comfort, replacing it with fear of loss. Every decision becomes haunted by the shadow of the choices left behind. Too many doors don't open possibility. They lock the mind in a cage of regret, where no matter what you pick, satisfaction slips away the moment you wonder what could have been. Stories greater than stats. Numbers speak to the mind, but stories speak to the soul. Statistics may impress, but they rarely move people to act. A story, however, bypasses logic and burrows straight into emotion, making the listener feel instead of calculate. When we hear numbers, we analyze. When we hear a story, we imagine. The brain doesn't just process it, it lives it. Imagine being told that millions go hungry every day. It's tragic, but distant. Now imagine hearing the story of a single child, thin and fragile, surviving on scraps. Instantly, the suffering becomes real, the urgency undeniable. The numbers haven't changed. the story has, and with it, the emotional pull transforms from abstract pity into burning compassion. This happens because the human brain is wired for narrative. Since the dawn of time, stories have been how tribes passed knowledge, warned of danger, inspired courage, and forged identity. Stories create empathy by triggering mirror neurons. We feel the pain, joy, or fear of the character as if it were our own. Statistics never do that. They inform, but they don't inspire. Leaders, advertisers, and manipulators wield this hack relentlessly. They know that one powerful story can crush mountains of data. Politicians don't win hearts with spreadsheets. They win them with tales of ordinary people lifted or broken by policy. Salespeople don't sell by quoting features. They sell by painting a vision of life transformed. The danger is that stories can be false and still move us more than truth. A lie told as a story can stir more passion than a library of facts. Emotion beats reason, narrative beats numbers, and stories will always rule over stats in the battle for belief. Soft voice makes people lean in. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. When you lower your voice, when your words slip out soft instead of loud, you create an invisible pull that forces others to come closer, to focus harder, to give you their full attention. A soft voice turns ordinary speech into intimacy. It says without words, "This is important, this is secret, this is for you," and the listener, desperate not to miss a syllable, leans in both physically and mentally. This works because the human brain is wired to prioritize scarcity. The quieter something is, the rarer it feels, and the more value we place on it. Loud voices wash over people like noise, but a hushed tone slices through chaos because it feels intentional, controlled, and personal. Parents instinctively use it when calming a child, lovers when sharing secrets, leaders when they want every word to carry gravity. The softness forces people to strain, and in straining, they invest more of themselves. But there is another layer. Softness disarms. It doesn't trigger defensiveness like shouting does. Instead, it cloaks you in calm authority, making others more receptive. This is why teachers sometimes lower their voices to quiet a classroom, or why negotiators speak gently to diffuse tension. The hush doesn't just grab attention, it holds it. Yet manipulators know this too. They use softness to cloak lies, to create intimacy that isn't real, to draw people close so resistance fades. The danger is subtle. By the time you realize you've leaned in, you've already surrendered focus. A soft voice doesn't fight for attention. It makes attention surrender willingly, one breath at a time. Group mirrors, leader's mood. A leader's mood is contagious, and whether they know it or not, entire groups rise and fall with their emotional state. When the leader enters a room radiating energy, the group feels alive, buzzing with momentum. When they carry tension, frustration, or gloom, that darkness spreads like wildfire, smothering the atmosphere. This is not coincidence. It is the psychology of emotional contagion, the invisible force that binds people to the leader's inner world. Humans are wired with mirror neurons, brain cells that make us unconsciously copy the emotions of those around us. In groups, the leader becomes the emotional anchor. Their sighs become everyone's unease. Their laughter becomes everyone's relief. Their confidence becomes everyone's certainty. Without a word, the leader sets the tone, and the group follows, trapped in the gravitational pull of their emotional energy. This phenomenon explains why some teams thrive under pressure while others crumble. A leader who exudes calm in chaos convinces everyone else that the storm can be weathered. A leader who panics infects the group with fear, amplifying mistakes and paralysis. In business, sports, politics, even families, the leader's mood dictates the collective spirit more powerfully than any strategy or command. Manipulators exploit this truth. By deliberately projecting positivity or despair, they steer group behavior without ever making a direct request. People think they are choosing freely, but they are simply echoing the leader's state. The terrifying reality is that one person's emotions can hijack an entire crowd, proving that leadership is not just about decisions, it is about emotional control, the silent hand that moves the many through the feelings of the one. Fear greater than reward in motivation. When it comes to driving human behavior, fear eclipses reward every time. The brain is wired to prioritize survival, and nothing captures attention faster than the possibility of loss, pain, or danger. Psychologists call this loss aversion, the reality that losing something hurts twice as much as gaining something of equal value feels good. A promised reward may entice, but the threat of loss seizes the mind with urgency and compels immediate action. Imagine being offered a bonus for finishing a project early. You might feel motivated, but if told you'll lose money or status if you fail, suddenly the fire inside burns hotter. Fear grips deeper than desire because it carries the weight of survival. From the earliest days of human evolution, those who reacted quickly to threats lived, while those who lingered on pleasure perished. That instinct remains. Fear hijacks the nervous system, flooding the body with adrenaline, sharpening focus, and making inaction unbearable. This is why governments warn with threats of punishment, why fitness coaches highlight the dangers of poor health, and why manipulative leaders stir fear instead of hope. Fear is faster, louder, and harder to ignore. Advertisers use it too, whispering, "Act now or miss out forever." Knowing loss drives action more powerfully than gain. The danger is how deeply it hooks the subconscious. Fear makes us irrational, pushing us to act not because something is right or beneficial, but because standing still feels unbearable. Where reward whispers, fear screams, and it is that scream, urgent, primal, relentless, that moves people more than any promise of pleasure ever could. Fake flattery still works. Deep down, people know when praise isn't genuine. The tone is off, the words feel forced, and the timing seems calculated. And yet, it still works. Even fake flattery seeps into the subconscious, planting a glow of self-importance that is difficult to resist. The conscious mind may dismiss it as insincere, but the subconscious clings to the compliment, repeating it, savoring it, needing to believe it. This paradox exists because the human ego is always hungry. We crave validation the way the body craves air. When someone flatters us, even badly, it scratches that itch. The mind whispers, maybe they're right. Maybe I do have that quality. And the flattery embeds itself like a seed. Studies have shown that even when people are told compliments are manipulative, they still feel warmer toward the person giving them. Logic rejects, emotion accepts. This makes fake flattery one of the most dangerous tools of manipulation. Salespeople shower customers with exaggerated praise to soften their resistance. Politicians flatter crowds to win loyalty, even when their words are hollow. Con artists lace their lies with over-the-top admiration, making their targets feel special, chosen above the rest. The victim often knows, on some level, that the words are inflated, yet the emotional high is too sweet to ignore. The truth is brutal. Humans would rather be lied to kindly than ignored coldly. Fake flattery doesn't need to be believed to be effective. It only needs to be heard. Once planted, it lingers in the mind, replaying in quiet moments, stroking the ego and binding the receiver closer to the flatterer who delivered it. Smile first, set the tone. The very first expression you show someone writes the script for everything that follows. When you lead with a smile, you seize control of the emotional atmosphere, setting the tone before a single word leaves your mouth. A genuine smile is contagious. Mirror neurons in the brain fire instantly, nudging the other person to reflect your emotion. In that instant, tension eases, defenses lower, and the stage is set for trust, warmth, and cooperation. Think of walking into a room where someone greets you stone-faced versus one where you're met with a warm smile. One chills the air, the other lights it up. The difference lingers long after the moment passes because first impressions etch themselves deeply into memory. A smile at the beginning of an interaction doesn't just soften how people see you, it shapes how they interpret everything else you say and do. Your words sound friendlier, your actions seem more genuine, and your presence feels less threatening. Psychologically, a smile signals safety. It tells the subconscious, I am not a threat. I welcome you. You belong here. That ancient wiring keeps people from pulling away and instead draws them closer. Leaders smile first to inspire loyalty. Salespeople smile first to open wallets, and manipulators smile first to hide ulterior motives. The smile disarms before the game even begins. But here's the trap. Once the tone is set, it's hard to undo. If you begin with coldness, everything after feels strained. If you begin with a smile, everything after feels warmer, smoother, more aligned. That first moment isn't just a greeting, it's the emotional foundation on which the entire interaction is built. Direct asks work best. We often think persuasion requires charm, subtlety, or clever tactics, but the brutal truth is that nothing works better than asking directly. The human brain is conditioned to respond to clarity. When you strip away the games and simply state what you want, the request lands with a force that is hard to ignore. Indirect hints give people wiggle room to escape, but a direct ask pins them to a choice, yes or no. And surprisingly, people say yes far more often than we expect. Psychologists have shown that most people underestimate how willing others are to help. In one study, participants predicted only a handful of strangers would agree to small favors. In reality, the majority complied, not because they wanted to, but because the pressure of a direct request was too heavy to resist. A clear ask creates an invisible social contract. Refusal feels rude, selfish, or guilty, so compliance becomes the path of least resistance. This is why fundraisers look donors in the eye and say, "Can you give today?" It's why salespeople don't just describe benefits but close with, "Will you buy?" It's why manipulators never waste time circling around. They know the raw power of directness. Clarity shocks the mind into action. The emotional sting of being directly asked activates our deep need to belong and be seen as generous. We don't want to disappoint. We don't want to appear cold. And so, more often than not, we give in. The most dangerous persuasion isn't hidden in tricks. It's right in front of you, sharpened into a simple, undeniable question. Use we, not you. A single word can transform the entire tone of a conversation. Say you, and it feels like separation, an accusation, a line drawn between speaker and listener. Say we, and suddenly there is unity, connection, and shared purpose. The human brain craves belonging, and the word we satisfies that hunger instantly. It dissolves barriers, replacing opposition with alliance, making the other person feel like they are part of something bigger than themselves. Think about how different these phrases sound. You need to fix this problem versus we need to fix this problem. The first isolates, sparks defensiveness, and shifts blame. The second invites cooperation, signals solidarity, and makes the burden lighter. Leaders know this instinctively. Great speeches are filled with we the people, not you the people. The collective pronoun ignites trust and loyalty because it reframes challenges as shared battles, victories as shared triumphs. This hack is used everywhere, from politics to sales to manipulation. A boss might say, "We all need to work late tonight," turning an imposition into a group mission. A manipulator might whisper, "We're in this together," even while pulling the strings for their own gain. The power of we lies in its ability to silence resistance. People comply more willingly when they believe they are not alone, when the struggle feels communal rather than individual. At its core, we is more than a word. It is a trigger for unity, belonging, and trust. It convinces the mind that the speaker and listener are aligned, even when the truth is that only one side truly benefits. Feeling watched equals more honest. Nothing shapes behavior more powerfully than the sense of being observed. When people believe eyes are on them, even if those eyes are imagined, they straighten their posture, filter their words, and act more honestly. It's not morality guiding them, but the primal fear of social judgment. To be seen is to be accountable, and accountability forces compliance with rules, expectations, and truth. Psychologists have proven this with startling simplicity. In offices, placing a photo of watchful eyes above an honesty box for coffee payments made contributions triple. Shoppers litter less when they feel security cameras are present. Even a subtle cue, a poster with eyes on it, makes people behave as if someone is monitoring them. The illusion alone is enough to trigger obedience. This happens because survival once depended on reputation within the tribe. To be caught lying, stealing, or breaking trust risked exile, which meant death. Those instincts never left us. Modern society may not banish us for dishonesty, but the subconscious still panics at the thought of being exposed. The gaze, real or imagined, activates shame, guilt, and the desperate urge to appear good. Manipulators use this knowledge to their advantage. Parents remind children, "I'm watching you." Authorities place cameras everywhere, not just to record, but to remind. Even in personal relationships, a carefully timed stare can push someone into confessions they would otherwise bury. The terrifying truth is this: honesty is not always born of integrity. Often, it is forced by the invisible weight of eyes, real or not, pressing on our conscience, compelling us to align with the version of ourselves we want the world to see. Stress narrows focus. When stress floods the body, the mind shifts into survival mode. The world shrinks, vision tunnels, and attention locks onto whatever feels most immediate. This is an evolutionary gift. When danger loomed in the wild, stress sharpened our focus, blocking out distractions so we could fight or flee. But in modern life, that same response can be hijacked, turning stress into both a weapon and a weakness. Under stress, the brain releases cortisol and adrenaline, chemicals that heighten awareness but reduce flexibility. You can see the details of a threat with razor clarity, yet lose sight of the bigger picture. That's why a stressed student obsesses over one question on a test and blanks on the rest, or why a negotiator under pressure clings to a single point and misses the broader deal. Stress narrows focus so tightly that peripheral options vanish, making us predictable and easier to manipulate. Manipulators and leaders alike exploit this. By creating urgency, deadlines, or artificial crises, they trap people in narrowed focus, unable to think critically. Salespeople use pressure tactics to make customers ignore long-term costs. Politicians stir fear to push agendas. In relationships, stress is used to make someone compliant, too overwhelmed to see alternatives. The danger lies in how convincing it feels. When stressed, you believe you're seeing clearly, but really, you're seeing less. The narrowed focus makes you blind to nuance, to opportunity, to escape routes. Stress doesn't just grip your body, it grips your perspective, funneling your mind down a single path where someone else can steer you exactly where they want you to go. Repeat key words. Repetition is a spell, and words are its incantations. When you repeat key words in a conversation, you etch them into the other person's mind, making your message feel heavier, more certain, more true. The brain is designed to latch onto patterns. A word heard once is just noise. A word heard twice becomes familiar. A word heard 3 times begins to feel like truth. This is the rhythm that advertisers, politicians, and manipulators use to burn ideas into the subconscious. Think of a speaker repeating phrases like freedom, freedom, freedom. The mind doesn't just process the word, It begins to feel it, believe it, crave it. Salespeople echo words their customers use: safe, simple, reliable, until those words stick like glue to the product they're selling. In arguments, repeating your core point makes it harder for the other person to dismiss. Their brain, whether they like it or not, keeps circling back to the word you planted. This works because familiarity breeds trust. The human mind mistakes repetition for reliability. If it keeps showing up, it must matter. If it keeps echoing, it must be true. The effect bypasses logic and drills into the subconscious where belief is born. But repetition doesn't just implant ideas, it manipulates emotion. Key words delivered again and again stir rhythm, urgency, and conviction. They overwhelm doubt with certainty. That's why leaders chant slogans, why propaganda thrives on repetition, why lies repeated long enough become accepted as reality. To repeat is to program, and every echo pulls the listener deeper into the world you are creating. People recall beginnings/ends. The mind is not a perfect recorder. It does not capture every detail evenly, but instead clings tightly to the start and finish, discarding much of the middle as forgettable noise. Psychologists call this the serial position effect, a quirk of memory that gives extraordinary weight to the first impression and the final moment. The opening sets the tone, the ending seals the memory, and everything in between fades like static. Think about a first meeting. Within seconds, the impression formed in the beginning lingers, coloring every interaction that follows. Later, it is the final words, the last smile, or the closing gesture that determines how the entire encounter is remembered. A great start can win trust. A powerful ending can erase missteps, but stumble at the beginning or falter at the end, and no amount of brilliance in the middle can fully save it. This is why storytellers obsess over introductions and finales, why speeches are crafted to open with power and close with impact. Marketers know the first slogan you hear and the last image you see will outshine all the details in between. Manipulators use this effect too, designing interactions so you're hooked at the start and left with a lingering glow at the end, even if the substance was hollow. The brain holds on to these bookends because they anchor experience. Beginnings signal what matters, endings give closure, and the middle dissolves into blur. What you remember most is not the whole story, but the way it started and the way it finished. Proof that memory is not about accuracy, but about impact. Praise effort, not talent. Compliments can build or they can destroy, depending on how they're delivered. When you praise talent, you're so smart, you're a natural, you're gifted. It feels good in the moment, but it builds a fragile foundation. Talent-based praise makes people afraid of failure, terrified of slipping from the pedestal they've been placed on. But when you praise effort, you worked so hard, you kept pushing, you never gave up. You ignite resilience, grit, and the unstoppable drive to grow. The psychology is clear. Effort-focused praise cultivates a growth mindset. It teaches the brain that success comes not from innate ability, but from persistence and strategy. A child told they're smart avoids challenges to protect their image. A child told they worked hard seeks challenges to prove their strength. One creates fragility, the other creates fire. This hack is why great coaches, teachers, and leaders praise sweat over talent. They know effort praise fuels motivation, while talent praise breeds fear of imperfection. Adults are no different. Tell an employee they're a genius, and they'll freeze at the thought of being exposed. Tell them they handled a tough task with grit, and they'll rise even higher. Manipulators twist this principle too. They disguise control as empowerment, praising effort strategically to make people work harder for less reward. The target craves more recognition, pushing themselves further into the trap. The truth is that talent is static, but effort is alive. When someone praises your struggle instead of your gift, It awakens something deeper, the hunger to grow, to endure, to prove through sweat and persistence that you are more than just what you were born with. You are what you fight to become. Face-to-face persuades more. There is a raw, undeniable power in standing before someone in person. Face-to-face interaction engages the senses in ways no message, call, or screen ever can. When you're physically present, your words are amplified by your tone, your gestures, your expressions, and even the invisible energy of your body. Every micro movement is read by the other person's subconscious, and this flood of signals makes persuasion far stronger. Presence carries a weight that cannot be ignored. Psychologically, face-to-face encounters activate trust. Eye contact sparks connection. A smile softens resistance. Subtle nods and shifts in body language reinforce agreement before the conscious mind even notices. Digital communication strips all this away, leaving only words. But in person, the full force of human psychology is at play. That's why sales close more often in meetings than over emails, and why apologies feel more sincere when delivered face-to-face. The body speaks as loudly as the voice, and together they overwhelm skepticism. This effect also stems from accountability. It's easier to reject, ignore, or dismiss someone through a screen. In person, the pressure of social norms makes no harder to say. Guilt, empathy, and the desire to avoid conflict all push people toward compliance. Manipulators know this well. Scammers, cult leaders, and smooth talkers rely on face-to-face persuasion because they know once you're in the same space, your defenses crumble faster. A screen filters humanity. Face-to-face strips away the filter and surrounds you with presence, making every word, every pause, every look feel bigger, heavier, harder to resist. In the theater of influence, nothing persuades more than proximity. Share to get others sharing. Vulnerability is contagious. When you reveal something about yourself, an insecurity, a secret, even a small personal detail, you unlock a powerful psychological reflex in others, the urge to reciprocate. Humans are wired for balance in relationships, and when someone opens up, silence feels like imbalance. To restore equilibrium, the other person feels compelled to match your level of disclosure, often revealing things they might never have shared otherwise. This is why interrogators sometimes confess minor truths before asking questions, why therapists self-disclose carefully to encourage clients to go deeper, and why manipulators fake vulnerability to extract secrets. A simple, "I've always struggled with," can break walls faster than any direct demand, pulling the listener into a space where oversharing feels natural, almost necessary. The effect runs deeper than just reciprocity. It taps into trust. When you share something personal, you signal safety. I trust you enough to expose this part of me. The subconscious answer is often, then I can trust you too. And with that, the floodgates open. Secrets pour out, emotions rise, and bonds tighten. But this hack carries a darker edge. Not all sharing is genuine. Con artists and manipulators weaponize false vulnerability, fabricating personal stories to lure people into revealing far more than they intended. Victims feel seen, understood, and connected, unaware they are being stripped of their defenses. To share is to disarm. It is an unspoken agreement that pulls others into intimacy, willingly or not. When used with intent, this simple act can collapse barriers, dissolve suspicion, and coax even the most guarded hearts into handing you their truths. Touching face spreads mimicry. The human mind is a mirror, and our bodies often follow cues we don't even notice. One of the strangest yet most revealing of these cues is face touching. When you touch your own face, brushing your cheek, adjusting your jaw, rubbing your chin, others watching are far more likely to unconsciously mimic the gesture. It slips past awareness, but the effect is undeniable. Mimicry breeds connection, and connection breeds compliance. This happens because of mirror neurons, brain cells that fire both when we act and when we observe someone else acting. Seeing another person touch their face sparks the same impulse within us. The act feels small, harmless, automatic, but beneath it, the brain is aligning, syncing, surrendering to rapport. People don't realize they're copying you. They just feel strangely in tune with you. Manipulators exploit this without mercy by deliberately using subtle gestures, face touching, leaning, scratching. They plant invisible strings that pull others closer. The victim doesn't notice the mimicry, but they feel it: comfort, similarity, a sense that we are alike. And once the mind believes in similarity, resistance weakens. Agreements feel natural. Trust feels deserved. Compliance feels self-chosen. Even in everyday interactions, this hack works powerfully. Friends mirror each other without thinking. Couples adopt the same habits over time. Strangers touching their faces in sync feel a flicker of connection they cannot explain. It's not the gesture itself that matters, it's what it unlocks. The brain reads mimicry as belonging, and belonging is one of the deepest human needs. Touch your face, and you may just be touching the hidden strings of another person's subconscious. Snap judgments in 7 seconds. Before you even speak, you've already been judged. Within the first 7 seconds of meeting someone, their brain races to categorize you: friend or foe, powerful or weak, trustworthy or suspicious. This lightning-fast evaluation isn't fair, but it's wired into human survival. Our ancestors couldn't wait to analyze every detail. They had to decide instantly if the figure before them meant safety or danger. That ancient instinct still rules us today. The mind scans for signals: posture, eye contact, smile, clothing, tone of voice. Each detail becomes evidence in a subconscious trial where the verdict is delivered almost immediately. Are you confident? Are you competent? Are you likable? Once the judgment is made, it is incredibly difficult to overturn because the brain clings to first impressions like gospel. This is why someone who enters a room with shoulders back and eyes steady is seen as powerful, even if they're shaking inside. It's why a warm smile can open doors faster than credentials. It's also why a single mistake at the start, a weak handshake, nervous fidgeting, or avoiding eye contact, can stain how you're perceived long after the moment passes. Manipulators exploit this hack by mastering those first seconds. Politicians choreograph their entrances, salespeople rehearse their opening lines, and con artists wear charm like armor, knowing once they've won those first few moments, the rest of the interaction tilts in their favor. 7 seconds is all it takes. A glance, a gesture, a tone, and your fate in someone's mind is sealed. Long before reason has a chance to speak, instinct has already written your story. Firm handshake equals trust. The moment two hands meet, an ancient ritual of judgment begins. A firm handshake doesn't just communicate greeting, it communicates strength, confidence, and reliability in an instant. Human beings are wired to interpret touch as a measure of character, and the firmness of a handshake becomes a silent statement of who you are. Too weak, and it whispers insecurity or deceit. Too crushing, and it shouts aggression or dominance. But just the right firmness sends the perfect signal: I am steady, I am strong, I can be trusted. This instinct is rooted in survival. In the past, a handshake was more than formality. It showed you held no weapon, that you came in peace. Over centuries, that gesture evolved into a subconscious litmus test. To this day, business deals, job interviews, and political meetings are influenced by a simple clasp of hands. Studies show that people who deliver firm handshakes are consistently rated as more competent, trustworthy, and likable. The power lies in how fast the brain reacts. Within seconds, the handshake bypasses logic and imprints an impression that lingers long after. You may forget someone's words, but you will not forget the way their handshake made you feel. Manipulators know this too. They perfect their grip to project authenticity, using that split second of touch to build trust they may later exploit. A firm handshake is more than etiquette. It is psychological theater. It sets the stage before any words are spoken, shaping the outcome of the entire interaction. Trust is not always earned through long conversations. Sometimes it's won or lost in the pressure of a single grasp. Smile before answering phone. A smile is not just seen, it is heard. When you smile before answering the phone, your voice transforms in ways the listener can't consciously pinpoint but instantly feels. The muscles in your face lift, your breathing shifts, and your tone softens into warmth. The result is a voice that carries friendliness, confidence, and approachability, even if the other person never sees your expression. It is a psychological trick that turns an ordinary hello into a magnetic first impression. The reason this works lies in emotional transmission. Humans detect microshifts in tone that reveal hidden moods. A forced or flat greeting signals stress, irritation, or disinterest. But when you smile, your vocal cords resonate differently, adding brightness and energy that the brain instinctively translates as positivity. The listener feels it, reacts to it, and begins mirroring it. Suddenly, the entire conversation takes place under the glow of your invisible smile. This is why call center agents are trained to smile before speaking, why salespeople practice it before cold calls, and why even manipulators rely on it to coat their words in honey. The listener may not know why they trust you more, but their subconscious associates that smiling tone with safety, friendliness, and sincerity. The effect is subtle but powerful. Deals close easier, tensions dissolve faster, and strangers become more open when greeted with that invisible warmth. A smile before answering isn't just a gesture, it's a weapon of influence, shaping the entire trajectory of a conversation before the first word is even spoken. Emotions boost recall. Memory is not carved by logic, it is burned into the brain by emotion. When something stirs your heart, whether joy, fear, anger, or sadness, your body floods with chemicals like adrenaline and cortisol that etch the experience deeper into your mind. You may forget numbers, facts, or neutral conversations, but you will never forget the moment someone broke your heart, the thrill of victory, or the terror of a near accident. Emotion is the glue that makes memories stick. This happens because strong feelings signal importance to the brain. In evolutionary terms, remembering emotionally charged moments increased survival. The rustle in the bushes, followed by terror, had to be remembered to avoid predators. The joy of safety or love had to be remembered to seek connection again. Even today, your brain prioritizes emotional memories as life lessons, branding them as significant, replaying them to ensure they're not lost. This is why great speakers and leaders don't just deliver information, they stir emotion. Facts may slip away, but the feelings remain, carrying the message long after the words are gone. It's why advertisers attach products to laughter, love, or nostalgia. It's why manipulators trigger fear or guilt, knowing those emotions will lock their message into your memory, haunting you until you act on it. The frightening truth is that your mind doesn't always remember what is accurate. It remembers what made you feel. And when feelings are strong enough, they become more powerful than facts, shaping not just your memories, but the choices you make in the present. Emotion doesn't just boost recall, it rewrites reality itself. People underrate their persuasion. Most people walk through life believing their words carry little weight, that asking for help or making requests is a burden others will resist. Yet psychology tells the opposite story. People are far more persuasive than they think. When you ask, others say yes far more often than you expect. The tragedy is that this power goes unnoticed, leaving countless opportunities for influence wasted. This happens because we see the world through the lens of our own self-doubt. We focus on the risk of rejection, imagining people resenting our requests, when in reality, humans are wired to cooperate. Saying yes feels easier than saying no, It avoids conflict, maintains harmony, and feeds the deep social need to belong. Studies show that when asked to perform even uncomfortable tasks, people comply at shocking rates, while those making the request consistently underestimate how likely others are to agree. The truth is unsettling. You are more influential than you realize. A small push from you can shift decisions, shape actions, even alter lives. But because you doubt your power, you often hold back, sparing others from requests they would likely grant without hesitation. Manipulators know this blind spot well. They exploit it by asking boldly, understanding that most people fold under the simple weight of being asked. What feels to you like an intrusion often feels to others like a chance to connect, to cooperate, to be useful. Your words carry more power than you dare to believe, and every time you underestimate your persuasion, you surrender influence you already possess. Ask small favors first. Influence often begins with something deceptively simple, a tiny request. When you ask someone for a small favor, a pen, a quick opinion, a minor bit of help, you are planting a seed of compliance that can grow into far larger acts of agreement. This psychological phenomenon works because people crave consistency. Once they've said yes to you once, their mind subconsciously pushes them to stay aligned with that behavior, making it easier to say yes again. The brilliance of this hack is that it feels harmless. Lending a pen takes no effort. Sharing advice costs nothing. Yet beneath the surface, the person's self-image is shifting. They start to think, I must like this person. I'm the kind of person who helps them. That subtle reframing binds them closer to you without their awareness. The next time you ask for something bigger, resistance is already lowered because they don't want to contradict their earlier action. Salespeople master this by first asking for a minute of your time before pushing the full pitch. Cult leaders begin with tiny commitments before demanding devotion. Even in relationships, manipulators use it to escalate control. What starts as a small request can snowball into total compliance. This hack works because every yes is a thread, and over time, those threads weave into a rope that ties the person to you. The danger lies in its invisibility. By the time someone realizes how many favors they've granted, how many times they've agreed, the pattern is set. What began as a single small favor becomes the foundation of influence, quietly eroding their ability to say no. Familiar greater than better. The human brain is addicted to familiarity. Faced with a choice, we almost always lean toward what we know, even when something objectively better is right in front of us. This is the mere exposure effect, the psychological bias that makes repetition and recognition feel safer than novelty. The familiar calms the brain, while the unknown sparks caution, no matter how superior the alternative might be. Think of how people return to the same restaurant, watch the same movies, or cling to outdated technology. It's not always because it's the best, it's because it's known. Familiarity whispers comfort, wrapping us in the illusion of safety. New options, even when clearly better, carry uncertainty, and uncertainty feels dangerous. The brain would rather settle for less than risk the discomfort of the unknown. This principle is why brands flood you with the same logo, the same slogan, the same colors. Repetition turns them into trusted friends, while competitors, no matter how innovative, feel foreign. It's why people stay in toxic relationships. They're painful but familiar, and that familiarity feels safer than the chaos of change. Manipulators know this too. They use patterns, routines, and repetition to bind their victims, making the familiar chains harder to break than the promise of freedom. The dark truth is that familiarity doesn't just influence, it dominates. Your brain equates known with good even when it's sabotaging you, and once something becomes familiar, it holds power over you because deep down, you'd rather cling to comfort than step into the fear of something better. Smile plus break eye contact equals playful. Few gestures carry as much hidden electricity as a smile followed by a sudden break in eye contact. It is a spark wrapped in subtlety, a silent game that teases the brain with both warmth and mystery. The smile signals openness, friendliness, even attraction, but the quick glance away pulls it back, leaving a gap the mind aches to fill. That push and pull is what makes the gesture feel playful, magnetic, and impossible to ignore. Psychologically, the smile alone is a reward. It floods the brain with a rush of dopamine, a sense of connection and acceptance. But when you break eye contact too quickly, you create tension, a sense of unfinished business. The subconscious interprets it as a chase, a puzzle, a flirtation. The contrast between presence and absence, warmth and withdrawal, hooks attention more effectively than either gesture could on its own. This is why the move shows up so often in flirting. It is the nonverbal equivalent of, I like you, but you'll have to catch me. It's also why leaders, salespeople, and influencers use it in subtler ways, injecting charm and lightness into serious exchanges. The person on the receiving end feels both invited and challenged, caught in a rhythm of wanting more. The brilliance of this hack lies in its ambiguity. A smile with steady eye contact can feel intense, even confrontational, but paired with a quick glance away, it becomes disarming, playful, human. It tricks the brain into leaning forward, curious, engaged, and eager to reconnect. It is not just a gesture, it is a game of tension and release, one that pulls people deeper without a single word spoken. Ask how, not why. The questions you ask shape the answers you receive. When you ask someone why, you trigger defensiveness. Why feels like judgment, as if they must justify themselves, defend their choices, or prove their reasoning. It forces them into the past, where excuses live. But when you ask how, the entire dynamic changes. How invites explanation, cooperation, and detail. It pushes people into problem-solving mode, guiding them to open up instead of shut down. This works because how shifts the brain away from justification and into construction. When someone explains how they did something or how they plan to do it, they reveal steps, strategies, and vulnerabilities they would never disclose under the pressure of why. Why did you do that? Sounds like blame. How did you do that? Sounds like curiosity. One closes the door, the other unlocks it. Leaders, therapists, and interrogators know this distinction well. Asking how encourages cooperation, giving the illusion of teamwork while drawing out information. Manipulators exploit it to gather details quietly, making their targets feel safe while revealing far too much. The shift is subtle, but its effects are enormous. Even in persuasion, how works as a trap. Ask someone how they'll accomplish something, and they begin to mentally commit, imagining themselves already following through. The mind hates contradiction. Once the how is spoken, the action feels inevitable. This is the quiet genius of the word. Why challenges, how invites, and when ownership increases value. The moment something becomes yours, it changes in your mind. A mug, a shirt, a car. Once you own it, even for a few minutes, its worth swells beyond its objective value. This psychological phenomenon, called the endowment effect, tricks the brain into overvaluing possessions simply because they are tied to identity. You don't just own the object owns a piece of you. Studies prove how powerful this effect is. In one experiment, people given a simple coffee mug demanded nearly twice as much money to part with it as they were willing to pay for it in the first place. Nothing about the mug had changed, only their sense of ownership. The act of holding it, of claiming it, fused it to their self-image. Losing it felt like losing part of themselves. Marketers and manipulators exploit this hack constantly. Free trials, test drives, and try-before-you-buy offers aren't acts of generosity. They're psychological traps. Once you've worn the shoes, driven the car, or used the software, you feel ownership, and giving it back feels like loss. And the brain hates loss more than it loves gain. That aversion pushes you to keep it, even at a higher cost. Ownership magnifies attachment in relationships too. People cling to unhealthy connections simply because they've invested time, energy, and identity into them. Walking away feels like losing more than a person. It feels like losing a piece of themselves. This is the dark side of ownership, the illusion that value comes not from the thing itself, but from the invisible chains it forges between who you are and what you believe belongs to you. Agree first, then disagree. Disagreement alone feels like conflict. It slams the door, sparks defensiveness, and makes the other person guard their position like a fortress. But when you begin by agreeing, even briefly, you disarm them. You lower their defenses, signal respect, and create common ground. Only then, once they feel heard, do you slide in your disagreement. The contrast makes your words harder to reject because you've already aligned yourself with them before pulling away. Psychologically, this works because humans crave validation. When you start with "you're right" or "I see what you mean," the other person's brain releases a small dose of relief. They relax, they feel understood, and they stop bracing for attack. In that softened state, they are far more likely to hear your challenge with an open mind. Instead of seeing you as an enemy, they see you as a partner in thought. Negotiators use this hack constantly, agreeing with a piece of someone's argument before introducing their counter. Leaders use it to gently redirect teams without crushing morale. Manipulators use it to sneak opposing ideas past resistance, wrapping the poison in a coating of sugar. The human brain struggles to fight someone who just validated it. Even the smallest agreement on a detail, a perspective, or even just an emotion creates a bridge strong enough to carry your disagreement safely across. Without it, your argument may bounce off brick walls of pride and ego. With it, the walls lower, and your voice slips through. To agree first is not to surrender. It is to open the gates before delivering your real message. Pause after they speak. The moment after someone finishes speaking is more powerful than most people realize. Instead of rushing to reply, if you let a pause linger, you create a vacuum, and that silence pulls them deeper into the conversation. It feels like you're giving weight to their words, showing you're not just waiting for your turn to talk, but truly absorbing what they said. To the speaker, that pause feels like respect, validation, and importance. But underneath, it is also one of the most effective tools of influence. Psychologically, the pause triggers unease. People expect conversations to flow smoothly, like a dance. When you delay your response, their mind scrambles. Did I say too much? Are they judging me? Should I explain further? That tension often drives them to keep talking, revealing more than they planned. What they intended as their final word turns into oversharing simply because you gave them the space to unravel. The pause also flips the power dynamic. By holding silence, you place yourself in control of the rhythm. You dictate the flow, and they adjust to you. Negotiators use this hack mercilessly, letting offers hang in the air until the other side folds. Therapists wield it to coax hidden truths out of clients. Even manipulators exploit it to make people feel guilty or uncertain, forcing them to fill the silence with concessions. This hack works because silence feels loaded. It amplifies the weight of your eventual response while putting pressure on theirs. By pausing after they speak, you don't just listen. You dominate the space without a word, pulling the other person further into your orbit. Titles, uniforms boost authority. Authority is often nothing more than costume and label. When someone wears a uniform or carries a title, the human brain instinctively assigns them power, respect, and credibility, even when they've done nothing to earn it. A doctor's coat, a police badge, a CEO title on a business card. These symbols flip ancient psychological switches, convincing us to obey without question. This happens because our survival once depended on recognizing hierarchy. Following leaders, elders, or warriors kept tribes alive, and that wiring still shapes our behavior today. When we see a uniform, we don't just see clothing, we see safety, expertise, dominance. A title whispered before a name, professor, doctor, officer, makes words heavier, almost sacred, even if the speaker is wrong. The famous Milgram experiments revealed the terrifying power of this hack. Ordinary people, instructed by a man in a lab coat, administered what they believed were painful shocks to strangers. They obeyed, not because they were cruel, but because the coat symbolized authority their subconscious could not resist. The uniform overrode morality. The title silenced doubt. Salespeople exploit this by dressing sharply, using corporate titles, or dropping prestigious job roles to elevate their status instantly. Manipulators invent fake credentials to cloak themselves in authority, knowing most people will hesitate to challenge anyone who looks official. Even in everyday life, people instinctively defer to the person who appears to hold power, whether it's the suited executive in a meeting or the security guard at a door. It proves that influence often has little to do with truth or competence. Sometimes, all it takes to control others is the right word before your name, or the right fabric draped across your shoulders. Visuals increase belief. The human brain is not built to trust words alone. It craves images. When a statement is paired with a visual, no matter how simple, belief skyrockets. A picture, a chart, even a basic symbol tricks the mind into lowering its guard. Suddenly, the message doesn't just feel like talk, it feels like proof. This is why advertisers plaster products with glowing images, why politicians surround their claims with graphs, and why manipulators slip in irrelevant visuals to make lies seem true. Psychologists call this the picture superiority effect. The brain processes images tens of thousands of times faster than text and locks them into memory with greater force. A fact may fade, but an image tied to that fact lingers, dragging the belief along with it. When people see an illustration, even one with no real meaning, the mind unconsciously interprets it as validation. It looks true, so it must be true. This is why conspiracy theories spread with shocking power when tied to photos, diagrams, or doctored screenshots. Logic doesn't stand a chance against the visceral punch of imagery. A claim without visuals feels like opinion. A claim with visuals feels like evidence. The shift is instant, primal, and devastatingly effective. Marketers and manipulators exploit this relentlessly. A product seems healthier with a glossy picture of fruit on the box. A false statistic seems credible when placed in a colorful graph. Even children instinctively trust books with illustrations more than plain text. Words may persuade, but visuals brand themselves into the mind, transforming doubt into certainty before reason has time to argue back. Be unpredictable to stand out. The human brain is addicted to patterns. It constantly scans for what comes next, craving routine and predictability to feel safe. But safety is not what captures attention. Uncertainty is. When you break patterns, when your actions defy expectations, you jolt the brain awake. Suddenly, you're not just another background figure. You're the one who stands out, the one they can't ignore. Think about someone who always behaves the same. Their words and gestures fade into predictability, blending with everyone else. Now picture the person who surprises you, the one who pauses when you expect them to speak, who laughs in the middle of tension, who shifts direction when everyone assumed they'd stay the course. That unpredictability doesn't just catch attention, it burns memory. The brain holds on to the unexpected because it might be important for survival. This is why entertainers captivate audiences with surprise twists, why leaders sometimes shock followers with bold moves, and why manipulators keep their targets guessing. The unpredictable person feels magnetic, dangerous, exciting, someone to watch closely. Their unpredictability creates anticipation. forcing others to invest attention just to keep up. But the power is double-edged. Predictability builds comfort, while unpredictability builds obsession. Used with care, it makes you unforgettable, keeping people hooked on your next move. Used recklessly, it breeds mistrust and fear. The secret lies in balance, steady enough to feel safe, but unpredictable enough to stay irresistible. In a world that numbs itself with routine, the one who breaks the pattern becomes unforgettable, the spark in the monotony, the chaos the brain can't let go of. Posture shapes mood. Your body doesn't just reflect your emotions, it creates them. The way you sit, stand, and carry yourself sends powerful signals to your brain, shaping the way you feel from the inside out. Slouched shoulders and a bowed head drag the mind into heaviness, amplifying sadness, fatigue, or defeat. But when you straighten your spine, lift your chest, and open your stance, your brain interprets it as confidence, strength, and control, even if you weren't feeling it moments before. This happens because the body and mind are inseparably linked. The nervous system reads physical posture as data, feeding back signals that influence your chemical state. A hunched posture triggers stress responses, while an upright stance reduces cortisol and boosts testosterone, fueling feelings of dominance and power. That is why athletes stand tall before competing, why speakers plant their feet firmly on stage, and why manipulators adjust their posture strategically to radiate authority without saying a word. But posture doesn't just change you, it changes how others respond. People instinctively read body language as truth. Someone standing tall with open shoulders is perceived as confident, trustworthy, and attractive. Someone collapsed inward is seen as insecure or submissive. The loop becomes self-reinforcing. Posture shifts perception, perception feeds emotion, and emotion solidifies posture. This is why leaders consciously command space with their stance, why successful people often look powerful before they become powerful, and why simply correcting your posture can alter the entire tone of your day. Your body is not just a vessel for your mood, it is a lever, one that can drag your mind upward or downward depending on how you choose to hold it.